This kid is the most talented genius in school. He's popular, and the other guys are jealous. He has it all, and he even has true love. When should true love start? Right from childhood? Maybe that's the secret to finding the one and getting moments like this. It all began a few years back. This kid was only 1 month old, and he's already feeding from the fountain of the gods. Because of that, he's way stronger than anyone his age. One day, he finished a quest to kick his feet 10,000 times in a row and unlocked a legendary skill. Now his body can evolve infinitely up to the human limit. His parents are amazed, saying their son could even become a cyborg or a hero. A normal baby wouldn't understand those words, but in Lin Zichen's mind, he was wondering if he was going to be Spider-Man or Genos. At just 4 months old, Lin Zichen was crawling all over the house at night. He does it in secret so he doesn't freak out his parents. While he's jumping and running around, his body keeps gaining strength points. When he hit 6 months, the kid could finally walk in front of his parents without scaring them. And while watching TV, he heard once again about cyborgs and genetically modified humans. Turns out, Earth gets constantly attacked by monsters, and these are the people who defeat the terrifying beasts. Humanity advanced its tech to build powerful cyborgs, and also leveled up in DNA research and genetic mods to create the genetics, humans who reach the absolute peak of physical strength. Watching this, Lin Zichen thinks his infinite evolution skill might actually be way better than that. While he was thinking, the new neighbors just moved in next door and came over to introduce themselves. Here's the wife, here's the husband, and in their arms they held someone special. Lin Zichen felt like their destinies were somehow linked. By 7 months old, Lin Zichen was training even harder, though in front of his parents he had to act like a normal kid. But the second he was alone, he was back to the grind. He tried to hide it, but a mother's eyes are always on her kids. It's impossible to slip up unnoticed. The woman thought she was going crazy and rubbed her eyes. Lin Zichen took the chance to act like it was just a hallucination. Check out his mom's job, she writes for us. Another day, the mom was washing her little treasure and called her husband over to look. Look, honey, our son has a six-pack and he's only 8 months old. The dad used 100% of his brain to remember how their son eats like a starving beggar, so he must be a once-in-a-millennium prodigy. Even Zhang Wangxin forgets she married a total goofball. Since then, the mom started watching her son a lot closer. She purposely left the TV on a channel talking about a Marshall family's genius kid who could lift 20 kilos at just 2 years old. She's absolutely sure Lin Zichen is even more of a genius than any other kid in the world, and she wasn't wrong. In the boy's eyes, nothing was impossible. When he turned 2, he also managed to lift 20 kilos like it was nothing, but he still had to hide it from his family and almost got caught way more times than he'd like. But this time, the one who almost caught onto his potential was his childhood friend, Shen Qinghan. She brings over these delicious sweets her mom makes, and after lunch, she falls asleep. Lin Zichen uses all that free time to train, and unfortunately, sometimes the water tap just can't stay closed for long, getting him totally soaked. By age 3, he was even stronger. 40 kilos was a piece of cake for him. At age 4, the top prodigy of the heavenly capital could only lift 30 kilos. Even being stronger than the prodigy, Lin Zichen still wonders why his level is still stuck at tier 1. Maybe tier 2 is just impossible for humans. The first time he went out to the city, the two beauties took their kids out for a stroll to see the town. The protagonist was very surprised to see beastmen and cyborgs. His parents didn't let him use electronic devices, so he convinced his mother to take him to a library, knowing he could get some answers there. Upon arriving, Lin Zichen ran straight for the books, startling his mother, as the children's section was on the other side. Shumeng said that little Chen Chen must truly be a genius for liking books so advanced for his age. Through the books, the protagonist discovered that the world was divided into 6 biological levels: normal, advanced, rare, epic, legendary, and mystic. Each of these was subdivided into 9 stages. Normal humans were at level 1, which was nothing compared to the beasts. Because of this, Lin Zichen concluded that he needed to train more if he wanted to face them. His system rewarded him for this discovery, and he realized that acquiring knowledge was also a way to become stronger. So, in the following days, he continued to train and read books. At 4 years old, little Chen Chen started kindergarten and met his teacher, Miss Zhang Mei. A short time later, the protagonist finally managed to advance to level 2. He could already lift 80 kilograms with ease, in addition to performing other feats. But unlike him, little Han Han was at the mercy of the other children, constantly being bullied. As a good friend, Lin Zichen couldn't just stand by and do nothing. So he decided to put a stop to the situation. He scared the other children, further increasing Han Han's admiration for him. By doing this, his system rewarded him. In addition to unlocking new missions, he also became the king of the kindergarten. 6 months later, he completed the reading mission and obtained the select celestial root of wisdom attribute, which greatly increased his learning capacity. Time flew by, and at 7 years old, he and his friend were already graduating from kindergarten. During the vacation, Lin Zichen didn't stop training. He increased his training routine to the point where he could run 100 meters in under 8 seconds. With so many benefits, he managed to study the entire elementary school curriculum in less than a month, further improving his attributes. When elementary school finally began, Lin Zichen was 2 steps ahead of everyone. He came out on top in every school competition, but to him, this was nothing, as his real goal was to unlock more titles in his system. Whenever he had time, Lin Zichen helped his friend study, since she wasn't as quick as he was. Despite this, Shen Qinghan was always obedient and diligent, and so her grades began to improve, to the point where she became the second best in the class. Besides studying, the protagonist practiced as many sports as he could to further evolve his physical abilities. In the midst of all this, a new student named Bai Shui joined the protagonist's class. Lin Zichen noticed right away that the girl was special, as he felt a powerful aura coming from her. Unlike the protagonist, what caught the other students' attention was Bai Shui's beauty. Even Shen Qinghan found the newcomer very beautiful, commenting that her hair looked like snowflakes. However, the protagonist could only think about why the new student had an aura so different from other humans. He wondered if she was genetically modified or the descendant of special parents. Since she arrived, Bai Shui hadn't spoken to any other student. She simply slept during classes and didn't even leave to go to the bathroom. At first, everyone was curious about her, but it wasn't long before the classroom routine returned to normal. However, at one point, a strange liquid began to ooze from Bai Shui. The smell was not very pleasant, and this caught the attention of the others. Because of this, a bully decided to throw water on her, saying that Bai Shui needed a bath. Obviously, the girl did not like that at all, but she did not take an aggressive stance. On the contrary, she started to cry. Confused, the protagonist, who thought Bai Shui was dangerous, was surprised by her reaction. His friend asked Lin Zichen to help. Even without knowing much about the new student, he saw in front of him only a girl being bullied. So, the protagonist went up to the bully and forced him to wipe the water off Bai Shui's desk. Terrified, the boy did not even consider disobeying. After all, Lin Zichen's reputation was known even among the older students, and because of that, no one dared to cross him. Following that, the protagonist demanded that everyone who had mocked Bai Shui apologize to her, and so all the students went to apologize. At that moment, Bai Shui spoke for the first time, thanking Lin Zichen for his help. Shen Qinghan said that is what friends do for each other, and after that day, the two girls became very close. They spent all their time together. One day, Bai Shui commented that she smelled bad and felt that it drove people away. She explained that she had always suffered because of it, and that no one ever tried to be her friend, but now, she felt grateful to have someone by her side. Shen Qinghan said she knew very well what it was like to go through that and could relate to her. She added that, if Bai Shui wanted, the three of them could be great friends. Bai Shui responded to the gesture with a hug and thanked her for such generosity. Furthermore, she mentioned that the two of them always shared their snacks with her and that she wanted to repay them. She showed a necklace made of beast fangs, explaining that it was a birthday gift from her mother, and that she now wanted her friends to accept it as a gesture of gratitude. Shen Qinghan gladly accepted the gift and declared that from now on, they would be together forever. However, this joy was short-lived, as Shen Qinghan received the news that her friend would be transferred to another school. The protagonist discovered everything by snooping around the principal's office. Not only that, but he also saw that Bai Shui was, in fact, an important girl whose identity was to be kept secret. After that day, Lin Zichen never saw Bai Shui again. Since then, surprising events became a constant in his life. One day, he gave his mother a massage to help ease the burden of her work, using a technique he had recently learned. Meanwhile, a news report on TV revealed that the prodigy from Kyoto, at only 10 years old, had managed to merge with the gene of a powerful beast. The boy was now able to lift 500 kilos, and the protagonist realized it was the same one from before. His father commented that this child prodigy was always on television, and he believed they were trying to turn him into some sort of advertising influencer. The protagonist's parents discussed the matter. Meanwhile, he thought he was falling behind, as he did not have a gene function like the TV prodigy. Even so, Lin Zichen knew he had the potential to be someone much greater, and remained confident in his future. However, it was announced on TV that a major beast attack had occurred in a neighboring country. Giant mutant rats attacked and devastated cities, becoming a difficult problem to control. Investigations into the mutant rat attack revealed that heretics were behind the chaos. Through a spokesperson, Japan asked other countries for help in eliminating the monsters and the heretics. Seeing this, Lin Zikin understood that this cult of heretics was a group that had betrayed humanity, allying themselves with monsters for their own gain. As he thought about this, a deafening noise startled the whole family. The protagonist went to the window and saw a group of flying cyborgs, wondering what they could be doing at that time of night. Without getting any answers, he went to school normally the next day. Upon meeting his friend, Lin Zichen noticed that the necklace she was wearing, the gift from Bai Shui, was glowing. The protagonist realized that the strange aura he felt did not come from the girl, but from that necklace. The jewelry did not take long to return to normal, but adding this to the fact of the flying cyborgs, Lin Zichen sensed that something big was about to happen. On their way to school, they met an unknown woman who complimented them. She approached them and asked if they were siblings. Shen Xinghan said they weren't, explaining they were just childhood friends. In a playful tone, the woman said she was envious, as she wished she had a friend like that too. Then, she asked why the two of them were going to school alone. Before his friend could answer, Lin Zichen pulled her by the arm, saying they would be late if they kept talking. After they walked away, he warned her not to talk to strangers, let alone answer their questions. After school, they walked home together. However, upon entering a strange alley, Shen Qinghan felt scared. Lin Zichen reassured her, explaining that the area was scheduled for demolition soon, which was why it was so quiet. But then, the woman from earlier suddenly appeared. She turned to her colleague Sheng and said she had finally found the children. Lin Zichen thought that even though he had purposely taken a different route to avoid her, the woman had found them anyway. The woman tried to convince the children to go home with her. Her accomplice, however, thought talking was useless and tried to capture them by force. However, Lin Zichen wouldn't allow it. He landed a punch on the big man, sending him flying. Seeing this, the woman wondered how a child could send an adult twice his size and weight, flying several meters with a single punch. Taking advantage of her distraction, Lin Zichen closed in and punched her as well. Lin Zichen thought that since there were no cameras in the area, it would be best to eliminate the witnesses to his power to avoid future trouble. However, he felt the ground tremble, not knowing where it was coming from. Suddenly, amidst the confusion, a mutant rat appeared. The monster saved him the trouble by eliminating both witnesses. Immediately, Lin Zichen started running from the monster, carrying his friend in his arms to move faster. The girl was terrified, but he just said they needed to find a safe place. In the midst of their escape, a female cyborg arrived, flying. He noted how quickly the reaction force had appeared. The cyborg, in turn, faced the monster and prepared a missile attack. Then, she fired at the giant rat, completely ignoring the children nearby. The cyborg didn't take long to deal with the monster, and the children managed to get home safely. He, in turn, thought the cyborg's level couldn't be very high, since she used weak missiles and still took 7 minutes to defeat the monster. In any case, he knows that mutant rats are tricky to deal with, as besides being large and strong, they can reach up to tier 5. Grateful to have escaped, Lin Zichen concludes that he needs to train much more in case a situation like this happens again. Sometime later, he and Han Han celebrated another birthday, making wishes and exchanging gifts. Thanks to the celestial root of wisdom, he learned how to carve a wooden hair clip and gave it to his friend as a gift. In the blink of an eye, they both graduated from middle school and went on to high school. During the vacation, as usual, Lin Zichen trained whenever he could, as he was eager to level up. It didn't take long for him to reach tier 3, and his normal attributes also evolved significantly. One night before school started again, he saw a news report about the prodigy from Kyoto. The report said that at 14 years old, the boy had fused with the genes of giant ants and could now lift 2 tons with a single hand. This made him think that if he was already strong, he could become even better with a gene fusion. When starting high school, due to his grades, Lin Zichen was invited to the city's best school and accepted on the condition that his friend could go with him. Known for being an exemplary student, he was welcomed by teachers and principals on the first day. He chose this school because it had excellent sports facilities, and he planned to play badminton with his friend. Shen Qinghan, for her part, was very excited to play for the first time. However, an older student interrupted their game, claiming the court was reserved for the upperclassmen. Annoyed, he intervened, stating that they had arrived first, and that this was a school rule, demanding they stay away from his friend. The older boy retorted that even if an emperor had arrived first, this was his court, and therefore, he made the rules. He replied that from now on, he would be the one making the rules, and they had better get used to it. With that, he unleashed a shot so powerful it shattered the older student's racket. Not just the boy, but everyone else was terrified. They apologized for the intrusion, claiming that from that moment on, they would respect the new rules. After that, no one dared to bother the protagonist or his friend again. During classes, Lin Zichen tried to learn more advanced topics, as he had already studied the entire high school curriculum in advance. Thanks to his abilities, he learned as much as he could from the internet, not only about school subjects, but about anything he found interesting. The protagonist not only became the top student, but also won every sports tournament he participated in. Although this didn't give him any advantages with his system, at least his fame with the girls at school grew considerably. However, he never stopped paying attention to his best friend and always helped her whenever she needed it. A while later, he entered a sports event focused on just 3 skills: strength, jumping, and speed. Being the best in these 3 categories meant dominating all events that required a good physique. Even while holding back during the competition, Lin Zichen took first place. It wasn't long before he earned his coveted title of Emperor of the High School. While walking home, the protagonist reflected on vital essence. He concluded that since he was above everything, devouring another creature's essence should increase his own. With this in mind, he borrowed his friend's necklace, and using it, managed to absorb the vital essence contained in a fang he possessed. That's how he discovered the object belonged to a mutant butterfly. After the discovery, he tried to research more about the creature on the internet, but couldn't find any related articles. Lin Zichen realized that only his system possessed such information, so he decided to analyze the necklace once more. Upon reanalyzing it, the system alerted him that he had absorbed the essence of an abyssal giant butterfly. However, he noticed he had only obtained 2% of the essence, as he only had the monster's fang, not its entire body. The next day, on his way to school, he thought that if he encountered another monster, he would try to absorb the essence of fear. His thoughts were interrupted when the martial arts teacher approached him. The teacher praised Lin Zichen's performance in the sports tournaments, saying it was the best in the school's history, and invited him to join the team. He insisted that with such talent, Lin Zichen could become the best fighter, and asked him to visit the training center later. The teacher was so insistent that the protagonist couldn't refuse. Anyway, upon arriving home, he killed a mosquito and realized that common animals didn't possess any vital essence to be absorbed. From this, he concluded that only beasts could release such power. To confirm his theory, he went to the market accompanied by his friend. Lin Zichen picked up some packaged meats, but because they were sealed, he couldn't feel anything. He then decided it would be better to go directly to the butcher instead of looking at the meats in the trays. He noticed his friend's confusion, as he hadn't explained the reason for his haste. However, his anxiety to discover the truth made him rush to the meat counter. At that market, which sold both common and beast meats, the protagonist could finally feel the vital essence emanating from the cuts. His friend, however, asked why he was so excited just by touching a piece of meat. Lin Zichen replied that it was because he found different types and asked if she didn't want to touch it too. The girl declined, and he decided it would be best to buy a few pieces to continue his tests at home. He understood his friend's shock. After all, beast meat wasn't cheap, so he decided to pick the most affordable piece. Even so, she found the price high and suggested he consult his mother before spending so much. The protagonist, however, reassured her, saying his mother had already authorized the purchase. In truth, his mother had told him that if he was going to buy beast meat, he should get enough for Han's family as well, as she intended to prepare a feast. Furthermore, the protagonist feared that absorbing the energy might alter the taste or even spoil the meat, so he couldn't perform the test there in the market. At the same time, he knew the piece was too expensive to be wasted and needed to think carefully, as he didn't know when he would have another opportunity to buy more. On the way home, however, Lin Zichen couldn't hold back. He decided to try absorbing the meat's essence right there, in the middle of the street. Immediately, his system alerted him that he had absorbed the essence of a ghost squid. However, the energy present in that single piece corresponded to only 1% of the total. After doing this, the protagonist noted that he would need to assimilate many pieces to reach 100% of a single creature. A ghost squid's main ability is to dissolve in water, which would be very useful, but buying the necessary meat for that would be quite expensive. He thought it best to find a way to earn money, as he couldn't rely on his parents for it. At least he noticed that the meat hadn't spoiled after its essence was absorbed, which meant they would have an excellent dinner. Due to his distraction, the protagonist nearly ran over some people. He was so focused on the meat that, for a brief moment, he forgot he was on a bicycle. However, because of the abrupt stop, his friend noticed something. She saw her teacher, Zhang Mei, being held hostage by an armed man. The police had surrounded the culprit and were trying to negotiate the hostage's release. The captain told his men not to shoot, as the victim's safety was their top priority. A soldier suggested using a tranquilizer, but the captain thought the idea was too dangerous, since the effect wasn't immediate, and the culprit could react upon being hit. In the midst of this, they saw a stone being thrown. The stone hit the culprit's hand, making him drop the knife and release the hostage. The captain quickly ordered his officers to move in. The culprit was captured, and the hostage was safe. The protagonist's friend saw him throw the stone, but Lin Zichen told them to go home quietly and talk about it later. However, the police captain also saw the boy throw the stone and questioned him. In response, Lin Zichen said it wasn't him and ran home. The captain found it strange that someone wouldn't admit to doing a good deed. After all, someone like that would normally demand a reward. Upon hearing this, the protagonist was surprised. He went back to the police captain and said he was the one who threw the stone, but that he just didn't want to draw attention. The captain said he needed to file a report before rewarding him. Before going with the officers, the protagonist told his family he was heading to the police station, but something unexpected happened on the scene. The culprit revealed himself to be a heretic and transformed into a monster. As he transformed, he attacked the police officers. The captain then ordered everyone else to fire at the giant rat. Realizing his police force couldn't handle it, the captain called for backup. Meanwhile, the protagonist grabbed his friend and the teacher, claiming they needed to get out of there as soon as possible. Lin Zichen said the rat wasn't following them, but they still needed to get away. In the midst of their escape, he saw a cyborg approaching the monster. The backup the police had called for arrived quickly, appearing on the scene carrying a laser cannon. Upon opening fire on the rat, the monster didn't stand a chance. Seeing this, the protagonist was impressed by the cyborg's power. After that, he was relieved to find his bicycle hadn't been hit in the attack. But when he looked at the meat, he saw it had spoiled and concluded that absorbing the essence really did ruin the meat. It just took a little while to happen. So, as an excuse, he blamed the heretic for spoiling his meat. As arranged, they took a patrol car to the police station, but the protagonist didn't expect to get into the same car that had carried the heretic's burned body. Despite the unpleasant smell, he thought there might still be some vital essence left in the body, and that perhaps he could absorb it. To find out if there was any essence left, Lin Zichen decided to try and absorb it. Without drawing any attention, he succeeded. His system alerted him that he had absorbed 5% of a giant rat's essence. He quickly realized that because the death was so recent, the body contained more essence than he had expected. Although he had managed to go unnoticed by the accompanying officer, it was a different story with the captain. After settling the matter of the reward, the captain asked how a boy could hit a target with a stone from that distance and with such precision. Lin Zichen replied that he always practiced his throws at school and that he had also been very lucky. In the middle of the questioning, his mother showed up, worried about him. Lin Zichen tried to convince her he was fine, explaining that he was only taken to the station to receive a reward for his bravery. However, his mother made him promise that the next time he saw a dangerous situation, he would run to safety instead of trying to intervene. She said she never wanted to hear that he was in danger again. Lin Zichen promised to stay out of trouble and with that, walked away from the captain. As he was leaving, he overheard some police officers talking about the rat cult being more active at universities, looking for low-skilled students. The officers thought that dealing with the smaller monsters wasn't enough, and that it was better to go after the root of the problem, the Rat King. Lin Zichen had never heard of this before, but he found plenty of information about it online. The cult's main base was in the city where he lived, most of its members were criminals, and the group had grown significantly in recent years. Furthermore, the Rat King's goal was to increase his power by forcing his followers to gather tons of evolution materials. Hearing this, Lin Zichen thought that perhaps the Rat King had developed intelligence. At that moment, he noticed his friend was quieter than usual. He remembered that, just like a child, she couldn't contain herself when she got nervous. So, he thought it best to keep her calm until they got home. When they arrived, Lin Zichen's mother was shocked to find out he had lost the meat. He explained that in the middle of the confusion, he couldn't keep track of the meat and it disappeared along the way. His mother then said that as long as he was okay, she didn't care about such trivial matters, which made Lin Zichen feel relieved. However, his father said he would go out and look for the meat. Lin Zichen warned him that even if he found it, the meat might already be spoiled. Back at the police station, the captain was still wondering how the boy had managed to throw that rock. Suddenly, he was startled to see that a huge rat had entered the station. He tried to shoot the rat, but the creature was more cunning than it looked. Back at school, the protagonist reflects that compared to the rat man and the cyborg, he is still weak. Therefore, he needs to find a way to get money to buy more meat and absorb its energy. He considers that becoming an influencer or something similar could be profitable, but he needs money quickly and without drawing too much attention. However, he concludes that in this world, martial skills attract far more attention than academic ones. The prizes in martial and sports competitions are much larger than those for other subjects, so he decides it's time to act. After class, Lin Zichen went to the school gym and greeted Professor Guo. The professor asks if he will finally accept the invitation to join the team. Before answering, the protagonist wants to know if martial arts competitions really offer cash prizes. The professor confirms that they do, stating that the prizes for the winners are quite generous. Hearing this, Lin Zichen agrees to officially become part of the school's martial arts team. With the decision made, Guo gathers all the students, announcing that they have a new member joining the group. the other students introduced themselves to Lin Zikin, welcoming him to the team. Next, Professor Guo demonstrated some basic fighting techniques for the newcomer. He explained that although they look simple, they are harder than they seem, but with time, anyone can learn them. The protagonist then prepares to practice. Using his system's ability, he instantly assimilates what the professor demonstrated and manages to execute the movements perfectly. Seeing this, the professor himself is left speechless, thinking it's impossible for someone to learn those techniques so quickly. He approaches and asks how Lin Zichen managed to learn it on the first try, concluding that he must be a prodigy. Later, at home, the protagonist's mother announces that dinner is ready. Lin Zichen walks over and asks what she prepared. She replies that she made the squid he wanted so much. The protagonist compliments the smell, and his mother urges him to eat while the food is still hot. After taking a bite, Lin Zichen says his mother is the best cook in the world. She, in turn, is happy he liked it, and mentions that she bought over 1 kilogram of squid meat. As he eats, the protagonist's system alerts him that he has absorbed the life essence present in the food, and he discovers that it's possible to absorb it even by eating the meat. Then, on television, a news report announces that a 14-year-old prodigy has merged with a power reactor, becoming the youngest cyborg in history. When activated, the reactor allows her to lift 2 tons, run 100 meters in just 3 seconds, and even fly. The protagonist realizes that, compared to the prodigy from Kyoto, this girl is much stronger, and he imagines it's due to her modifiers. Shortly after, the TV reports that the police captain, He Chun-shan, was attacked in his office by a mutant rat and did not survive his injuries. Hearing this, Lin Zichen wonders if it was the same rat he faced. Outraged by what happened, he intensifies his training, determined to defeat any rat that crosses his path. His physical strength advances to the point where he can lift a ton without using any modifiers. Lin Zichen has also trained in martial arts and now feels ready to participate in any fighting tournament. A short time later, he walks toward the school gym alongside his friend, who is curious about his training. On the way, a girl approaches the protagonist, asking if he has had breakfast yet. She offers him some fresh milk in case he's hungry. Lin Zichen says he didn't need it but thanks her for the kindness. Seeing the scene, an envious boy thinks that, in addition to stealing his prize at the festival, Lin Zichen is now getting all the attention from the girl he admires. Furious, he interrupts Lin Zichen's walk, saying he was rude to refuse their classmate's milk. The protagonist explains that he's allergic to milk, but the envious boy insists that's no excuse, as he could have accepted it out of politeness and given it to someone else. Then, he challenges Lin Zichen to a duel, proposing that if he loses, he will never bother him again. Otherwise, Lin Zichen will have to drink all the milk the girl offered. Immediately, the protagonist receives a mission from his system to win the fight in exchange for a reward. Faced with this, he accepts the duel. The news of the fight between the boys spread quickly, and soon everyone gathered in the school gym. However, most of the crowd, especially the girls who were already fans of the protagonist, sided with Lin Zichen. The envious boy became even more furious with the situation and decided it was the perfect opportunity to teach Lin Zichen a lesson in front of everyone, as he couldn't accept being in second place. Lin Zichen commented that he was in a hurry and wanted to get home before dinner. In response, his arrogant opponent said he didn't intend to take long either. Professor Guo, acting as the judge, asked them to be careful and have a fair duel. Hearing this, the envious boy claimed that, to be fair, he would let Lin Zichen have the first 3 strikes, since his opponent had only trained for a month, while he had been practicing for 2 years. Accepting the offer, Lin Zichen went on the attack and, with a single punch, ended the fight. The professor was shocked, and even the other students couldn't believe what they had just seen. In contrast, Shen Qinghan celebrated her friend's victory, and it wasn't long before all the other girls did the same. The protagonist's system notified him that he had gained affection and priority among the girls, but warned him that to increase his fighting attribute, he would need to defeat 1,000 opponents. Realizing he had only defeated 1, Lin Zichen asked the professor if he could take the opportunity to have more duels. Hearing this, several of the other boys got scared and left the gym before they could be challenged. However, the envious boy didn't accept his defeat, claiming he was caught by surprise and demanding a rematch. Professor Guo, however, told his student to accept defeat like a man, and announced it was another student's turn to fight Lin Zichen. The student chosen by the professor was scared on the inside, but tried to maintain an intimidating posture on the outside. 10 minutes later, the protagonist had already defeated all the opponents the professor had put forward. However, none of those victories counted toward his progress, and there were still 999 opponents left to defeat. Even so, the professor praised Lin Zichen's performance, claiming he had become the best fighter in just 1 month. The professor added that with him on the team, the school would surely win the upcoming regional tournament. At that moment, Lin Zichin realized the tournament would be the perfect chance to achieve his goal, as he figured that defeating opponents in an official competition should count toward his progress. In this world, high school students either train in martial arts or focus on academics, but it's the martial artists who tend to stand out. Inspired by this, Shen Qinghan began training with her friend, and Lin Zichin taught her everything he could. He had her run and do push-ups to improve her physical conditioning and stamina. Additionally, he also helped her relieve muscle tension with massages. At the same time, he also dedicated himself to his own training, as he wanted to be ready for the tournament and unlock his survival potential. A month passed, and the day of the tournament finally arrived. In the city gymnasium, anticipation for the tournament is high. In the athletes' rest area, Guo comments that their school was unlucky, as they would face the strongest team right in the first round. The city's top school has a monster who's not only incredibly strong, but can also run 100 meters in 9 seconds. That's why none of the other students want to face him. However, Lin Zichin volunteers to be the first from his school to fight. His professor agrees and says he's counting on him to secure the victory. Once in the arena, Lin Zichin's opponent says he researched him and found out he's a promising fighter. However, he claims that this is no place for a 5'7" rookie, and that he will demonstrate the vast difference in strength between them. The referee signals for the fight to begin. The opponent rushes in to attack, excited, but as he tries to land a punch, he's surprised to see Lin Zichin dodge. Not only that, but Lin Zichin counterattacks and manages to take down the big guy with a single blow, winning his first match. His friend celebrates the victory. His schoolmates and the professor are also very pleased. Meanwhile, the opponent is scolded by his coach for his carelessness. In turn, as expected, Lin Zichin realizes that defeating an opponent in a tournament increases his mission's progress. The opposing team's coach prepares his next student to fight. As soon as the referee gives the signal, the opponent attacks, but Lin Zichin dodges the blow again and launches a counterattack. Just like before, he ends the fight with the first strike. The crowd is stunned by the newcomer's immense strength, and the opposing coach begins to despair. He prepares his next student, telling him not to fail like his teammates. This opponent is known not for his strength, but for his intelligence, which makes the crowd even more excited to see the outcome of the fight. As soon as the referee gives the signal, the opponent attacks, delivering a series of consecutive strikes. His coach gets angry, as he had instructed him to focus on defense and not rush into a disorderly attack. The student, however, thinks he doesn't need to defend himself, but rather use his special technique. However, he is shocked when he realizes that none of his punches are landing. He stops attacking and asks how his opponent managed to dodge all of his attacks. Lin Zichin tells him not to use the same move forever, which makes the opponent even angrier. Tired of seeing the same technique, Lin Zichin decides to end the fight quickly. With this latest victory, his supporters go wild. Lin Zichin's next opponents were even weaker than the previous ones, so it wasn't very difficult to defeat them. 2 days of the tournament passed, and no adversary lasted long against him. Soon, Lin Zichin led his school to victory in the tournament. However, he still needed to defeat 984 opponents to complete the mission, and he realized this would take a while. At least he won the largest share of the prize, a total of 20,000 in cash. Combined with other prizes he had won, he now had a total of 30,000 yuan. However, he spent that money quite quickly. Lin Zichin bought it all in squid meat, and after eating about 15 kilograms, he absorbed 33% of the monster's energy. A while later, he managed to advance to Tier 4, and in addition, his physical strength and speed also increased. He and his friend graduated from high school, but along with that, some sad news emerged. Shen Qinghan got a good overall grade, but she didn't do as well in martial arts, so they both didn't get into the same university. Lin Zichin tried to reassure his friend, saying that the university's director would be visiting him and he could talk to her about it. However, the girl said that the director was only interested in him and that she didn't want to be a burden. Lin Zichin then stated that he would only join a university if he had his friend by his side. The director went to the protagonist's house for a visit and expressed her immense desire to have him as a student. After a long conversation, she commented that she had spoken enough and asked if Lin Zichin had any requests. The protagonist replied that he was satisfied with everything he had heard, but that he would like his best friend to be able to study with him as well, as they always had. Faced with this, the director agreed to accept both of their enrollments as soon as classes began. The news made the two friends very excited. Before the start of university classes, Lin Zichin participated in his last tournament as a high school student and won all his fights with ease. After receiving the prize money, he decided to fulfill a wish. He was at 80% assimilation with the ghost squid, so he bought enough meat to absorb the rest and reach 100%. With that, he managed to absorb what was needed, and his system alerted him that the assimilation with the ghost squid was complete. Now, he possessed the same abilities as a ghost squid and could move freely in the water without worrying about breathing. Upon testing this new ability, the protagonist realized he could breathe underwater without any problems and that his skin didn't get wrinkled. However, other than that, there were no other benefits, which was a bit disappointing. Even so, he decided to continue assimilating beast abilities until he found something truly useful, as he knew he had to start somewhere. Shortly before returning to school, he traveled with his friend and family. To better understand his aquatic abilities, he convinced everyone to go to the beach. While Shen Qinghan complained about the cold water, the protagonist took the opportunity to dive in headfirst, putting his newly acquired skill into practice. His friend said she didn't know how to swim and asked him to teach her. Lin Zichen had no idea his friend couldn't swim, so he tried to teach her as best he could, but he didn't expect the girl to learn so quickly. Shen Qinghan was pleased that she could even open her eyes underwater. She commented that she had always heard it was difficult because your eyes would sting, but now she thought people were exaggerating. Hearing this, the protagonist realized that wasn't normal and tried to understand where Shen Qinghan's affinity for water came from. Thinking more about it, he remembered that the girl had always had trouble with her balance. He then imagined that this might have some connection to her affinity for water, or perhaps in a past life, she had a special physique, like that of a goddess. In any case, he decided to continue swimming with his friend, but the girl's performance surprised him even more. She could hold her breath for a very long time, even without the squid ability he had worked so hard to acquire. Meanwhile, Shen Qinghan started hearing a voice underwater. Startled, she decided to return to the surface. The protagonist then asked what had happened to make her so tense. Shen Qinghan replied that she heard a voice deep down and got scared. She couldn't understand what was said, as it seemed to be a different language, but she was sure it was a female voice. After returning to the hotel, the protagonist researched the matter more on the internet, but found nothing about it. This curiosity kept him from sleeping, so he decided to train until he was exhausted. He concluded that if he kept training that way, it would only be a matter of time before he could defeat powerful monsters with his bare hands. After reaching level 5, he decided to go for a run and test his new attributes. Not only did his speed increase, but his jump also became higher. Furthermore, his strength also became superior, allowing him to lift a great deal of weight. After returning home, his student routine finally resumed. He and his friend arrived early for the routine cleaning, and Lin Zichen noticed that his new classmates already knew him. To his surprise, the system alerted him that cooperative tasks like cleaning also unlocked rewards, but he would need to perform 1,000 of them first. Lin Zichen was curious to know what he would get at the end of each mission, but for now, he decided to go to the supermarket to do some shopping. After all, since he had finished assimilating the squid, it was time to test other beast meats. There, he found some tyrant eagle meat and thought that could be his next target. The tyrant eagle is a fearsome beast, a slightly higher level than the ghost squid. Its vision is 30 times sharper than a human's, and thanks to this, its hunting skills are so precise that it never fails to capture its prey. In short, Lin Zichen concluded that assimilating the eagle's abilities would be very useful, not to mention it was the second cheapest meat available. After consuming a piece of the meat, he gained 1% of the eagle's essence. He realized that at this rate, he would need 200,000 yuan to assimilate it completely. This meant he would have to focus even more on tournaments, since the greater the reward, the greater the challenge. Sometime later, at the university, Lin Zichen met his professors. The students in his class also had to introduce themselves. The girls didn't seem very shy, but unlike them, Shen Qinghan became quite nervous when it was her turn, giving a timid and quick introduction. However, it was the protagonist who gave the briefest introduction of the entire class. At the end of class, a classmate asked Shen Qinghan what her score was on the entrance exam. She replied that she got a 709 and asked the same question back to her classmate. The girl, named Chuxin, said she scored 10 points lower, but that it was still a good score. However, she hadn't done well on the physical exam, scoring only 95 points, and she asked if her new classmate had done well. Shen Qinghan thought that since the physical exam was out of 100 points, Chuxin's score wasn't that bad. She, on the other hand, had only scored 79, but was too embarrassed to say it out loud. Her classmate insisted on knowing the score, but Shen Qinghan just said she had a lower score. Chuxin commented that getting a 90 or 92 would still be a good score. Noticing his friend's discomfort, the protagonist decided to intervene. He walked over and asked for Chuxin's number, which surprised her. A handsome boy taking the initiative to ask for her number made it impossible for her to refuse. Meanwhile, Shen Qinghan was thrilled that her friend had intervened, as she was already at a loss for words. Lin Zichen took advantage of the situation and got a boy's number as well. He then created a group chat for the four of them and realized this action helped advance his mission's progress, while also allowing him to get to know his classmates better. better. The boy's name was Yu. He came from a family of martial artists and even had his own dojo. Furthermore, he was from a neighboring city and had also participated in tournaments before. The girl's name was Lee Chuksin. Her family owned a famous clothing store, which made her quite wealthy. Lin Zichen and Shen Qinghan also shared a little about their lives, and soon the four of them became friends. During their conversation, Yu brought up a topic, asking who they thought was the strongest student in the class. Lee Chuksin guessed it was Lin Zichen, claiming he was the city's top scorer on the entrance exam. Yu was surprised, as he hadn't known that. However, he stated that Lin Zichen wasn't the only strong one, as the university had spent a fortune to recruit 2 students from Noan City. One of them was named Wang Shujie. He was the 3rd highest scorer in Noan City, and could run 100 meters in under 8 seconds. The other was a big guy named Lu Gang, who was so strong he could lift 300 kilograms with a single hand. The girls were shocked by this information, but to the protagonist it was nothing surprising. Soon, the bell rang, and the students received 4 textbooks for each core subject. Since he already knew the content of the books, Lin Zichen didn't even bother with them. Instead, he found a good hidden place to train during his free periods. He was still worried about the cultists and the mutant rats, and concluded that he needed to get as strong as possible to reach Tier 6 and match the monster's level. Sometime later, a professor led an activity outside the classroom and asked if any student knew how to make a fire by rubbing sticks together. Yu said that no one uses something like that in their daily lives, and questioned if anyone actually learns how to do it. His answer came immediately as he looked to the side and saw other students making fire with small sticks. The professor was surprised and asked where those students had learned that technique. Lu Gang said he took extracurricular classes during the holidays, while Wang Shuji claimed he learned how to do it on the internet back in elementary school. After the duo from Nanwan City showed off, the other students started trying to make fire. The protagonist then took charge and taught his classmates. In the next class, the martial arts teacher set the perfect stage for the same duo from before to show off again. Unlike them, the protagonist thought it best not to draw attention to himself. A month passed, and one of the teachers proposed a test to evaluate the students' progress. He also said he would give a cash reward to the top 3 students, with the first place winner receiving the largest amount. Upon discovering the prize was 888, the protagonist thinks that with that money, he could buy a lot of meat. Unlike before, he now had a good reason not to hold back. The test was divided into 2 categories, mechanical modifications and gene fusion. An hour later, some students complained about the difficulty of the tests, while the duo from the neighboring city boasted, thinking they must have gotten the highest scores. Annoyed by their constant showing off, Yu felt a strong urge to beat them up, but thought it better to restrain himself. The mechanical modifications teacher appeared with the results. Shen Qinghan celebrated upon finding out she passed with 61 points. As for Yu, his 88 points caught the class's attention. He said it was just luck, but deep down, he was proud of his above-average score. Next, the teacher announced that Lu Gang and Wang Shujie had tied with 95 points, getting only 1 question wrong. The 2 began to show off, claiming they would have gotten a perfect score if they'd had 10 more minutes. Yu was once again annoyed by the duo's arrogance. The teacher continued, saying that despite the test's difficulty, one student had managed to get a perfect score. Upon hearing that Lin Zichen had done better than them, Lu Gang and Wang Shuji were in shock. Unlike the duo, the rest of the class celebrated Lin Zichen's result, commenting that he had surpassed even the prodigies. The protagonist, on the other hand, just wanted to know when he would receive the promised prize. The teacher handed him an envelope with the reward, but found it strange that his student was so focused on the money. Shortly after, the gene fusion teacher also arrived with the results of his test. The duo from Nanwan scored above 80 but weren't satisfied, as they were aiming for perfection. Shen Qinghan scored 78 points, placing her in the top 5 of the class. To everyone's shock, the protagonist aced the test again. Unable to accept it, Lu Gang and Wang Shujie contested the result, claiming it was impossible to get every question right twice on such a difficult test. However, the gene fusion teacher stated that he had created the questions himself, making it impossible for anyone to have the answers in advance. With that, the 2 prodigies ended up earning a reputation for being envious. After the break, a new test was administered, survival. The teacher explained that although the prize was the same, his test was different and consisted of 3 parts: climbing, swimming, and fire building. Wang Shuji told his colleague that they needed to win this test to reclaim their honor. Lu Gang agreed, stating that he was motivated and would do anything to avoid being embarrassed again. The test began with the climbing challenge, where speed determined the score. As expected, the protagonist finished in first place. He, however, was worried about his friend, who was the last to complete the course and now depended on the swimming test to recover. In the fire building stage, Lin Zichen lit the fire quickly. He hadn't wanted to show off before, but now it was a competition. Finally, in the swimming test, he excelled again. and his friend finally showed her talent, surpassing the prodigies. After the survival tests, the two students from the neighboring city were silent for a while. The quiet, however, didn't last long, as the next test was martial arts, and they saw a new opportunity to stand out. The duo's excitement grew even more when the teacher announced that the evaluation would be done through duels. Before that, however, there would be a warm-up to measure 3 skills: the 100-meter dash time, single-hand weightlifting, and vertical jump height. The protagonist performed better than everyone in the warm-up, but held back so as not to reveal his true potential, still easily surpassing his rivals. The duo, however, believed they could beat him when the real duels began. After the warm-up, everyone headed to the ring. Due to his results, Lin Zichen was the first to be called, but no one dared to challenge him, not even Lu Gang and Wang Shujie. Seeing this, the teacher chose an opponent for him. Lin Zichen thought he needed to hold back, but at the same time, he didn't want to waste time, so he ended the fight with a single blow. Since his task was to defeat his classmates one by one, he decided to do it as quickly as possible. With each victory, the pair of prodigies grew more apprehensive, losing all desire to face him. Meanwhile, He stepped into the other ring, claiming to be in his best condition, and challenged the snobbish students. To avoid fighting the protagonist, Lu Gang accepts the challenge, confident he can easily defeat a weaker student. He goes on the attack, but the big guy barely feels his blows. Lu Gang manages to grab his opponent's leg and hurls him out of the ring. After his victory, he remarked that of all his opponents, He had the best technique, but claimed his own was superior, and that's why he won. Immediately after, the protagonist steps into the ring and challenges Lu Gang. The big guy realizes he can no longer run and goes into the fight, attacking with all his strength. However, the protagonist swiftly dodges, causing Lu Gang to lose his balance and fall to the mat. To finish it, Lin Zichen lands a single punch that sends his opponent flying out of the ring. Seeing the scene, the other students start taunting Wang Shujie, asking if he isn't going to challenge Lin Zichen. Knowing he can't back down, Wang Shujie accepts the fight, believing he can win if he uses his intelligence. Wang starts the fight giving it his all, but the protagonist catches his punch. With a right hook, he sends Wang flying, who falls to the ground unconscious. After that, Lin Zichen defeated everyone else with ease. He realized that according to his system's mission rules, he couldn't face the same opponent twice, but now only the girls were left. Contrary to his expectations, all the girls offered to fight him. One of them even volunteered to be first. But upon entering the ring, her intention wasn't to defeat him, but to hug him. Lin Zichen lightened the force of his blow and just knocked her down, crushing the girls' hopes. The others also tried to use the same strategy, but Lin Zichen ended the fights quickly and effortlessly. After the test ended, the teacher announced that in 1 month the class would challenge a stronger second-year class. Lin Zichen was worried, thinking he had run out of opponents, but the news came as a gift. Soon after, Lu Gang approached the protagonist, saying he wouldn't accept falling behind him and would consider him his main rival. Wang Shujie did the same, stating he wouldn't rest until he surpassed Lin Zichen. However, the protagonist ignored them both, thinking that with the money he earned, he would buy plenty of meat to absorb. At the end of the day, he arrived home and realized that despite winning all the tests, he still didn't have enough to buy the amount of meat he needed. So, to supplement his income, he decided to follow the same career as his parents and opened an anonymous account as a novel writer. The next day, he received a message from the platform's editor, saying his work was good and that they wanted to hire him to write a series. But what really caught his attention was a news report about a giant rat that attacked a warehouse on the outskirts of the city. The report stated that the monster was 5 meters tall and had split a cyborg in half with a single bite. In response, the attacked cyborg activated his suit's self-destruct to take the rat with him, and his plan worked, as the monster died instantly. Seeing this, the protagonist wondered where these giant rats were hiding and how many of them existed. Not long after, the day came when the protagonist's class had to face an older class. The teacher explained that their opponents weren't as good in one-on-one duels, but their collective strength was greater, so they could use that to try and win. Lin Zichen offered to be the first from his class. After all, he wanted to advance his mission. His opponent was a girl who claimed to be the weakest in her class, and she asked why she had to face the strongest student from the other class. The rival class's teacher argued that it was normal for the weakest to go first, and questioned why Lin Zichen's teacher wasn't following this rule. Hearing this, the protagonist's teacher asked him not to fight now and to wait for his turn. Lin Zichen left the ring, annoyed. The teacher then chose one of the girls from the class to fight, but she seemed very insecure. At that moment, Shen Qinghan spoke up, saying that she was the weakest in the class and that according to the rules, she should be the first to go. She entered the ring but was completely lost, and her classmates tried their best to encourage her. However, Shen Qinghan only grew more nervous. Her opponent rushed forward, giving her no room to attack. Shen Qinghan thought that if she couldn't win, she would at least try to tire out her opponent as much as possible. 3 minutes passed, and her opponent realized she was facing a very resilient girl. Deciding it was best to end it quickly, she threw a punch and managed to defeat Shen Qinghan. The girl felt quite embarrassed for losing. However, her teacher praised her performance, saying she was smart to try and wear down her opponent. Lin Zichen also praised his friend, commenting that she lasted a long time and that if she kept training, she would get even better. The next student from the class thought the opponent was tired, so her chances of winning would be higher. But as she attempted a kick, the student left her guard down and ended up taking a punch. Her opponent said she made a mistake by underestimating an older student, explaining that she might not be very talented, but she had a year more of practice than the newcomers. Li Chuxin was next, and she promised to take down the girl who had defeated her friend. Unlike the others, Li Chuxin managed to defeat the older student. With that, Shen Qinghan celebrated her friend's victory. The protagonist in turn commented that his friend also deserved credit, because if she hadn't tired out the older student, Li Chuxin wouldn't have won. 2 hours later, the rival class's teacher commented that only 4 students were left in the other class and thought he was about to win the lunch he had bet on. However, the protagonist's teacher replied that the best of his class was yet to come. He then introduced He Yu, saying it was his time to show what he could do. He Yu said he was eager to warm up his fists and that he wouldn't hold back to win. His opponent, however, said that the boy in front of him was just a kid making a fool of himself. He Yu replied that no one would ruin his moment and without hesitation landed a kick to his opponent's face, sending the boy out of the arena. He then asked who was making a fool of themselves now. Soon after, another opponent appeared, saying that He Yu was quite arrogant. The fight began and the opponent wasted no time, but He Yu quickly dodged the blow and launched a powerful counterattack, sending another one to the ground. After that, He Yu defeated several opponents in a row, but it was clearly draining his energy. Then, on the 6th opponent, he lost, leaving his class with only 3 people, while their adversaries still had 13 students. However, the remaining 3 were not mediocre fighters. The teacher called for Wang Shuji, who entered the arena and defeated 10 opponents in a row, losing only due to exhaustion. The next to fight was Lu Gang, who defeated 2 more opponents. With that, the protagonist's teacher told his rival that he only had 1 fighter left and asked if he would like to give up. In response, the rival teacher simply called for his best student. Wang Jinhei entered the ring, and it was clear he was twice the size of Lu Gang. Even so, Lu Gang was not shaken and believed he could win. However, when he landed a punch on his opponent, he realized the boy hadn't even felt the blow, as his body fat absorbed the entire impact. With this, Lu Gang figured he just needed to keep hitting harder, but it was no use. Not only was he unable to hurt his opponent, but he was also getting tired. Seizing the opportunity, Wang Jinhei counterattacked. He easily grabbed Lu Gang by the neck and hurled him out of the arena. Seeing this, the teacher of the younger class wondered where such a strong student had come from. The rival teacher explained that Wang Jinhei had recently transferred, so many didn't know him yet, but that was about to change. It was then that the protagonist's teacher realized why his rival was so confident, and knew that if they lost, he would have to buy lunch for the other class. He told Lin Zichen he was up next, but not wanting to pressure the boy, told him not to worry too much about winning or losing. However, the protagonist, without a hint of concern, declared that he would win the fight. Upon entering the ring, his opponent commented that he was too small and skinny, and that he didn't want to fight and end up hurting him. The protagonist's friends, who were cheering for him, began to taunt the big guy. With that, Wang Jinhei abandoned the idea of not fighting, but said he would stand still for his opponent's first 10 strikes, so no one could say he went too hard on someone clearly weaker. At the first opportunity, Lin Zichen landed a clean punch on the big guy. He sent him flying with such ease that his opponent seemed as light as a helium balloon. Everyone watched as the supposedly strongest student from the rival class fell before Lin Zichen. The protagonist's friends celebrated his victory, while the big guy, after waking up, barely knew what planet he was on. After the fight ended, the rival teacher commented that his colleague's student was incredible, almost as good as Wu Tiancheng had been in his first year. Hearing this, the protagonist asked who this Wu Tiancheng was. His teacher replied that Wu Tiancheng was a senior who had graduated a few years ago. When he was just a beginner, he defeated a senior, earning a great reputation. Just like Lin Zichen, he was a prodigy and had excellent results. The protagonist said he was impressed, but in his thoughts, he concluded that Wu Tiancheng wasn't as strong as he was. A while later, the class teacher celebrated their victory and announced that, because of it, the rival teacher had paid paid for everyone's lunch. The students cheered and thanked Lin Zixin for defeating their strongest rival. After that, he became even more famous, and several students wanted to know more about his training routine. Worried that her friend would no longer have time for her, Shen Qinghan was as helpful as ever. Also, one thing that hadn't changed was her constant trips to the bathroom. But while doing so, she overheard other girls calling her a suck-up for trying to monopolize Lin Zixin's attention. However, she didn't let it get to her, and said she wasn't a suck-up, but Lin Zixin's childhood friend. On the way home, the protagonist noticed his friend was a bit down and asked what had happened. She said that when she was little, her mother always told her things would get better when she grew up, so she didn't need to worry so much about her condition. But she claimed that, to this day, she still had to wear diapers to bed to prevent nighttime accidents, and it bothered her a lot. At this, she said she must have some kind of disability, as it wasn't normal for someone her age to have this kind of problem. Lin Zixin told her it wasn't a disability, but a superpower, and that she just hadn't fully developed her ability yet. The girl was surprised, as she had never imagined something like that. But the protagonist argued that she had an incredible talent for swimming, and that was thanks to her special power. Shen Qinghan said her friend had been amazing since they were kids, and asked if he had a superpower too. Lin Zixin replied that just like her, he also had his abilities. Shen Qinghan then said she couldn't wait to see this power and that, even without knowing what it was, she could tell it was something very powerful. Just then, a commotion broke out nearby as a man was trying to drive away some rat exterminators. Wielding a broom, he shooed them away, claiming he wouldn't let any of his brothers die, and would fight anyone who tried to kill another one of them. Shen Qinghan said the man had to be crazy and got scared. He agreed that the man seemed mentally unstable, but said it was better for them to just go home. Back at home, he and his family heard a news report on TV about a young female teacher who had disappeared after leaving work. His mother commented that she was the fourth young woman to vanish that month alone. His father corrected her, saying she was actually the fifth. The report even recommended that young women avoid going out alone at night, as the cause of the disappearances was unknown. His mother told him not to let Shen Qinghan walk around alone and to always accompany her. The next day, at the city police station, the man from before had been detained and had undergone a medical examination. The doctor said the results were inconclusive, as the patient hadn't spoken a single word. However, a police officer stated that the man wasn't mute, because when he was arrested, he had been screaming his head off. Suddenly, the man began to transform into a rat. The officer immediately called for backup, knowing that only cyborgs could handle such a monster. The officers tried to contain the creature until reinforcements arrived. A female officer informed the captain that all the cyborgs were out on missions, and that they didn't have enough ammunition to hold out. Faced with this, the captain decided the plan was to lure the rat out of the city and wait for support. The officers got into their patrol car and tried to get the monster's attention. However, the creature was relentless and ended up hitting their vehicle during the pursuit. As a result, they failed to lead the rat out of the city as planned. But, luckily for them, a female cyborg arrived just in time and fired at the monster. However, the rat dug a hole and escaped. The cyborg believed that due to its injuries, it couldn't have gone far, so there was still a chance of finding it. In the middle of the night, he couldn't sleep after checking the performance of his novels. He saw they were doing very well and making money, so he decided to go out for a run and test how strong he had become. He noticed he had already achieved good results and that, at this rate, he would be able to reach his true potential. Just then, he saw a rat in a dark alley. The creature was eating and talking to itself. Lin Zixin was startled and wondered if it was the same rat he had seen on the news earlier. He thought it would be best to run and call the police, but the rat saw him and, hungry, rushed toward him to devour him. Lin Zixin was caught by the monster and saw no other choice but to fight. With a single blow, he knocked the enemy back. The rat, surprised, thought the boy looked like just a young student and wondered how such a skinny kid could be so strong. Without wasting a moment, Lin Zixin threw a rock at the enemy. He thought that he couldn't give the rat any chance to get close. Keeping his distance, he continued to throw rocks, giving it no opening to attack. After being hit several times, the rat was finally defeated. Realizing the monster was dead, Lin Zixin tried to absorb the rat's essence, but noticed only 2% was left. Last time it was 5%, so he began to see a pattern. Perhaps it had something to do with the heretics, but for now he decided to head home, as it was almost dawn. Sometime later, the cyborg arrived at the same location and wondered who was responsible for killing the rat. Elsewhere, a cultist appeared with a captured woman, offering her to the Rat King. In turn, the king said that a single woman was not enough to satisfy his hunger. The servant apologized and claimed there was an explanation. He said that due to security alerts, few women were out on the streets at night, making it difficult to capture them without drawing attention. In response, the king ordered his servant to start capturing young men as well. He took the offering and threw a piece of meat to his servant. The servant thanked him for the gift and ate the meat. After taking the offering, the king said that next time he didn't want ordinary people. He explained that they work too hard and their flesh isn't good. Therefore, he preferred the powerful, whose tranquil lives made their flesh tastier. Back with the protagonist, he has been helping his friend train at home since it has become dangerous to be on the streets. He thinks he needs to help her improve her physical performance and does his best to assist Shen Qinghan in any way he can. After the warm-up, the protagonist said he wanted to check her striking power. He observed that Shen Qinghan had the angle of her punch right and was also stronger than before. Next, she tried a kick, but her friend told her she needed to correct her posture. After the training session, Shen Qinghan felt very tired. She commented that maybe training 3 times a week wasn't enough and asked if they could train every day. Lin Zichen explained that training every day wouldn't increase her stamina. It would just make her more tired. Therefore, he thought it was better to stick to their current schedule. At that moment, the protagonist received a notification on his phone. A breaking news story caught their attention. The Mechanicus group announced they would provide free treatment for the former genius cyborg, who became disabled after undergoing cybernetic modifications as a youth. Furthermore, the genius from Jing University had merged with the genes of the 1,000-web spider, becoming the youngest person to undergo a genetic fusion at 18 years old. Normally, people are selected for this procedure as adults. Otherwise, there is a high probability that their bodies cannot withstand it, just as it had with the girl. At home, the protagonist tried to focus on his own tasks instead of worrying about other prodigies. He was doing very well with his novels, as thanks to his abilities, writing good stories was effortless for him. His father found out what he was writing and encouraged him to continue, claiming he could make a lot of money with his talent. The protagonist, in turn, could only think about how much meat he could buy with that money. Back in class, the martial arts teacher organized some duels to check the students' progress. As always, Lin Zichen defeated everyone and once again won the tournament's first place prize. On the other hand, his friend couldn't defeat anyone and came in last. However, she fought much better than last time, and even though her progress wasn't as fast as the protagonist's, she was showing improvement, however small. Even the teacher noticed Shen Qinghan's progress and encouraged her to keep training. He said that in a month, his class would challenge the strongest elite class of the second year, and his goal was to prepare the students to defeat them. Sometime later, the protagonist started earning money from his novels. But when he went to the market to buy meat, the vendor told him that if he bought 50 kilograms, he would get a 5% discount. Because of this, the protagonist thought it was better not to buy the meat right then, as he didn't have enough for 50 kilograms and decided to save up more money. The next day, his friend said the college cafeteria had opened a new stall for fried food, and she wanted to check it out. Just the smell of the food made Shen Qinghan's eyes sparkle. As she picked up her tray, she commented that it was a good idea to arrive early as the lunch line was packed. Some students were even fighting for a spot. Then Shen Qinghan asked if her friend could do something about it. Lin Zichen simply said he would leave the matter to Heiyu. However, the boys who cut in line weren't intimidated. They grouped together, believing that since there were more of them, no one would dare to challenge them. Heiyu was quite annoyed by this behavior, but it didn't take long for him to realize the bully's intention. Shen Qinghan immediately realized that Heiyu was in trouble. So the protagonist decided to intervene, telling the others not to cut in line. However, one of them asked what would happen if he decided to stay where he was. Lin Zichen simply said he would report him, as he had filmed everything on his phone. With that, he managed to intimidate the bullies, and realized that the simple act of cutting in line was enough to tarnish someone's reputation. Far away, in the city's wealthy district, the leader of the heretics reported that Sha Qiang had been eliminated after going mad and causing a disturbance in a market. He then introduced a young member, claiming this person would take over Sha Qiang's duties. Furthermore, he stated that the Rat King no longer wants common people, and that from now on they will focus on the rich and powerful. However, the others questioned this decision, arguing that not only is it harder to capture elite individuals, but their disappearances also draw more attention. The leader replied that they could start by taking the children of powerful people, as it would be easier than focusing on the parents. As for the newcomer, he instructed him not to start by hunting big fish. Instead, his task was to capture ordinary young people from the middle class. In response, the newcomer declared that he would hunt the best young person in this city for the Rat King. A while later, Heiyu was complaining about the arrogance of the students from the elite class. Lin Zichen replied that good grades don't mean a person is good or kind. At that moment, he was startled by a news report. Another child of a wealthy person had disappeared, making it the 5th case. It wasn't about money, as no ransom was demanded. Therefore, it could only be related to the heretic cult. In any case, the day of the tournament finally arrived. The boys who had cut the line the other day were on the rival team. It didn't take long for Heiyu and them to start taunting each other. Just like last time, Shen Qinghan was the first to fight for her class. When attacked, Shen Qinghan managed to defend herself at first, but her opponent's strength was far superior. Not just her, but other classmates were also defeated by the same opponent. including Lee Chuksin. A girl from Lin Zichen's class managed to defeat the rival, taking advantage of the fact that she was already tired. However, another senior student stepped into the ring, and in less than 10 minutes defeated 9 opponents. On Lin Zichen's side, besides himself, only He Yu, Wang Shujie, and Lu Gang remained. Meanwhile, in the rival class, only 5 girls had been defeated, and 36 students were still left. The class's teacher noticed the disparity in strength and was about to lose hope. However, he noticed that the rival team still had 6 girls and asked if He Yu could handle them. He Yu replied that he could, and immediately stepped into the ring. He thought that 6 was a small number, as he would have liked the chance to fight even more pretty girls. Living up to expectations, he defeated the rival girls without much effort. Then, it was time to face the first boy from the rival team. Right away, He Yu faced one of the boys who had cut in line and commented that, besides being rude, he also had no sense of danger. However, the opponent launched an attack and surprised He Yu with his strength and speed. Furthermore, he mocked He Yu, claiming that he gave up too easily. He Yu tried to resist, but he couldn't fight on equal terms against his adversary. Soon, He Yu was defeated and realized his opponent was much stronger than he had imagined. After his victory, the opponent confronted Lin Zichen, accusing him of meddling in other people's business and not having the courage to face him. Upon hearing this, Lin Zichen stepped into the ring at once. He thought this was a perfect opportunity to progress in his mission. Most of the crowd was on Lin Zichen's side. After all, the ones who cut in line were seen as scoundrels. This only irritated the opponent, who attacked immediately. However, when he attacked, Lin Zichen defended the blow. Then he slammed the opponent's head into the ground. In a humiliating fashion, the arrogant boy was defeated. The defeated boy's friends commented that he was one of the 5 strongest in their class and had been beaten as if he were nothing. Lin Zichen's teacher said he had been hiding his strength, as he noticed his student hadn't attacked the opponent directly. Even his classmates were impressed upon hearing this. Lin Zichen then asked who his next opponent would be. Everyone was afraid to challenge him after what they had seen. Regardless, the tournament had to continue. After 30 minutes, Lin Zichen had defeated all 29 remaining students from the rival team. But upon checking his system, he realized his mission progress was still very slow. He realized that by always fighting last in tournaments, he faced fewer opponents, and he decided that had to change. The next day, he went to the college director and asked her to organize a tournament where students from all classes could challenge him in exchange for a cash prize. After his proposal, Lin Zichen took the director to the gym. Confused, she asked why he had brought her there. Lin Zichen replied that he wanted to demonstrate his strength. Startled, the director thought he was going to show off his muscles, but instead, the young man surprised her by lifting 700 kilograms. The director quickly understood what he was talking about and concluded that Lin Zichen was the strongest student she had ever seen. Therefore, she agreed to organize the tournament he had requested. Lin Zichen reminded her that there needed to be a good reward, otherwise, no one would want to face him. The director stated she would do as they agreed and organize everything properly. Additionally, he asked her to keep his strength a secret, explaining that otherwise, few would be motivated to challenge him. Next, the director called the martial arts teacher to explain the tournament. The teacher, however, wondered what was happening. He noticed that the director, who always walked around the university with a stern expression, was treating Lin Zichen with unusual consideration, and he couldn't understand why. In any case, it didn't take long to organize the tournament. Since not everyone knew Lin Zichen, the director introduced him to the other students and explained the tournament and its rules. However, many students found the idea absurd. To them, Lin Zichen was just an arrogant rookie, and his confidence was baseless. Despite this, he announced that starting the next day, he would be in the gym for 2 hours every day, and that everyone was welcome to challenge him. Sometime later, in the middle of the city, a young man was walking when he was approached by 2 beautiful girls who invited him for a drink. However, the young man declined the invitation. In truth, he was searching for handsome young men, but was frustrated at not finding anyone who fit the profile. He wasn't looking for a boyfriend, but rather an offering for the rat god. It turns out he was a heretic in disguise, who had gone out on a mission and had found nothing so far. He thought his deadline was approaching and didn't know how to resolve the situation. Then, in the midst of his thoughts, he saw Lin Zichen running nearby. The heretic realized that this young man perfectly fit the profile he was looking for and figured he had finally found his prey. Now, all he had to do was capture him. The heretic followed him into a dead-end alley. He thought that since no one was around, the task wouldn't be difficult. As he assumed his rat form, he prepared to hunt, but was immediately immediately hit by a brick. The rat is hit by a brick and becomes completely disoriented. Lin Zichen thinks that of all days, a rat had to show up to interrupt his training, but he won't allow it. Surprised at being hit, the rat itself wonders why it was so unlucky. Lin Zichen notices the creature didn't try to counterattack and wonders if the enemy was really defeated with a single brick. In any case, he thinks this is good, as he doesn't want to waste time, and decides to absorb the rat's energy before anyone shows up. Upon doing so, he understands why the animal was so weak. It possessed only 1% monster essence. Lin Zichen concludes that it's better to avoid running at night, because even though that was a weak rat, he might end up encountering a stronger one prematurely. Upon arriving home, he comes across some surprising news on television. The news reports that the city's public security headquarters, in a joint operation with an instructor from the university's Evolution Institute, has taken down the rat cult. The instructor who defeated the Rat King was Wu Tiancheng, a high-level biological genificator. The entire operation lasted only 30 seconds, and the rats were quickly defeated. Seeing this, Lin Zichen realizes just how powerful someone of a high level is. Far away, a companion asks Tiancheng if he knows the professor's whereabouts. Tiancheng says he doesn't, adding that besides the professor, the group of experts sent to contain the outbreak in the source zone is also still missing. He explains that despite this, the situation is under control, which is why he stayed behind to deal with the stray rats. Tiancheng's ally comments that the Rat King, who left the entire city's security force helpless, was nothing more than an insignificant rodent before his genius. He then suggests that his colleague take the opportunity to give a lecture at his old university. However, Tiancheng refuses, claiming he has work to do and can't pay attention to freshmen. Sometime later in an underground cave, the Rat King is reprimanded for drawing attention by devouring high-class humans. His master says he allowed the rat to expand its race for the purpose of digging tunnels, but he ruined the plans by attracting the attention of hunters. Because of this, the master claims the Rat King deserves to die. The rat, in turn, begs for its life and asks its master for another chance. In response, the ogre says he might consider it, but the rat will have to pay the price. The ogre comments that despite the bad smell, rats are quite tasty. He also says the Rat King is clever for having another pose as him while he acted from the shadows. However, the ogre claims that if he doesn't finish the tunnel, he will be eliminated. Back to the protagonist, he walks through the college and notices his reputation for being arrogant and stuck up is growing. However, his main concern is the fugitive heretics. The authorities have set bounties on each of them, but Lin Zichen thinks he can't draw attention to himself, so he decides to set it aside for now. In any case, he goes to the gym as planned and notices that many people have shown up. Shen Qinghan announces there will be participation prizes, like consoles and smartphones, in addition to the main cash prize for the grand winner. Several boys get excited to participate because besides the prizes, they also want a chance to get closer to Shen Qinghan. However, the first challenger is a girl. Not just her, but several others also show up, wanting a chance to get close to Lin Zichen. For them, the simple act of managing to touch him would be satisfying enough. Unlike them, the protagonist finds the situation very strange and doesn't like having to fight against girls. But to advance in his mission, he makes an exception and, with light blows, defeats them all. Even so, the girls still want to keep fighting. Lin Zichen, however, states that he won't fight anyone he has already defeated. They get upset as they wanted to spend more time in the ring with the protagonist. Amidst this, some bullies appear, wanting to take out their anger and envy on Lin Zichen, but the protagonist quickly defeats everyone who steps into the ring. Then, he asks who will be next. From the crowd, a boy steps forward. The others recognize him as Yan Shaoxuan, the emperor of the second-year elite class. A year ago, Yan Shaoxuan defeated an entire class in a tournament, making a name for himself among the others. Now he wants to show that he is still superior to everyone by facing Lin Zichen. He claims that no matter how strong the protagonist thinks he is, there will always be someone with superior strength. Lin Zichen thinks his opponent is talking too much instead of fighting, so he decides to end it quickly. He lands a single blow on his opponent and sends him flying, as he was tired of hearing so much nonsense. The sight of such a strong student being defeated so easily leaves some of the onlookers in shock. Others, however, see it as an opportunity to grow stronger by defeating him, as is the case with the university's #1 martial arts student. Chen Wuxing challenges the protagonist, saying he's actually quite strong. However, before his opponent can start making a speech, Lin Zichen asks the teacher if they can start the fight already. The teacher gives the signal, and feeling ignored, Chen attacks first. Their fists collide. Lin Zichen withstands the impact, but the same cannot be said for his opponent. Seeing the strongest in the school defeated, the others are left speechless. However, Lin Zichen tells them not to just stand there watching and picks one of the the students to be his next opponent. The boy gets into the ring just for a chance to win the participation prize, knowing full well he can't win. Even going easy on him, Lin Zixin defeats him with a single blow. Several other boys reach the same conclusion about the prizes and get into the ring, already knowing they will lose. In turn, after defeating several students, Lin Zixin finally reaches the 1,000 win mark and completes his system's mission. Upon completing the mission, the protagonist earned a simple but very practical bonus that increased the damage of his strikes. Afterward, he withdraws from the tournament and leads his friend out of the gymnasium. After a while, the director congratulates him on becoming the university's #1. She comments that he even defeated Chen Wuxing with a single blow, and from this, she deduces that Lin Zixin had been hiding his true strength from the beginning. The director states that Chen had recently taken the admission exam, and she saw with her own eyes that he lifted 690 kilograms. However, she also saw Lin Zixin lift 700 kilograms, and she believes he can lift even more than that. Changing the subject, the protagonist asks when the tournament prize money will be transferred. The director realizes that Lin Zixin is only thinking about the reward, but she transfers the prize to him right away. She also tells him that from now on, Lin Zixin will represent the university in martial arts tournaments. However, the protagonist says that he and his friend really enjoy swimming and asks if they can both use the gymnasium's pool. Not only that, but he also asks to use the pool whenever he wants, and exclusively. The prestige he has gained with the director is so great that she agrees to his request without a second thought. Lin Zixin makes up an excuse, claiming he feels embarrassed wearing a swimsuit, and so he asks for the security cameras to be turned off when he's swimming. The director thinks that leaving a student couple alone in a pool with the cameras off is dangerous, and she wonders if Lin Zixin might have ulterior motives. Regardless, she agrees to meet his demands. The director hands him the key to the facility and says that from now on, the two of them have full autonomy over the pool, but she asks Lin Zixin to be responsible when using the space. Upon leaving the director's office, the protagonist thinks that he can now test his friend's full capabilities. For her part, Shen Qinghan says she has a request. She explains that she signed up for a singing competition and would like someone to help her practice a duet. She then asks for her friend's help, and he agrees. The protagonist notices that Shen Qinghan is taking more risks with competitions and hopes this will bring her more confidence. Sometime later, the protagonist goes to Shen Qinghan's house to help her. Meanwhile, the girl's father asks his wife if it's alright to leave the two of them alone in her room. Xu Meng replies that they are childhood friends, and even though they're older now, she sees no need to interfere, telling her husband not to worry about it. Back in the room, the protagonist says they've practiced singing enough, and that it would be better for her to study her college subjects for a bit. He reminds her that they'll be going to the pool tomorrow to start her swimming training, and tells her not to forget her swimsuit. Shen Qinghan says she'll remember. However, once she's alone, she starts thinking about what to wear, torn between choosing something more revealing or more modest. In any case, she knows that besides Lin Zixin, the pool will be empty, so she concludes she doesn't need to worry too much about it. The next day, the protagonist arrived at the pool and noticed that, just as he had requested, the cameras were covered, so there was nothing to worry about. Just then, his friend appeared for practice, apologizing for taking so long to change. Outwardly, Lin Zixin said it was no problem, but inside, he was melting at how cute she looked. Embarrassed, he thought it was best for them to start training right away. Next, they both performed a beautiful dive. However, Shen Qinghan noticed something was different and told Lin Zixin she needed to surface. Together, they got out of the water. Lin Zixin asked what had happened. His friend replied that the water was passing through her body. She tried to cup some water with her hands, but the liquid literally passed right through them, leaving her completely confused. Frightened, Shen Qinghan asked what it could be. Lin Zixin figured it could only be because of her powers, so he asked to take a closer look at her hand. He noticed there was nothing abnormal, except for the water passing through her skin. Even so, he thought it best to check if the water also passed through other parts of her body. A while later, Lin Zixin splashed a little water on each part of his friend's body. However, Shen Qinghan began to feel uncomfortable and asked if this would take much longer. After finishing the tests, Lin Zixin said that apparently her hands were the only parts of her body that possessed this ability. Shen Qinghan commented that since she was a child, she'd had trouble holding it in when she needed to use the bathroom, and asked if this could be related to the ability. He thought there was a possibility, but told his friend to try and feel for herself if any part of her body was able to hold water. Lin Zixin thought that he had narrowly avoided acting strangely. On the other hand, Shen Qinghan reflected that she wasn't a sick girl, but a user of some water-related power. She imagined that if this were true, she might be able to stand side by side with Lin Zixin and become his perfect other half. Sometime later, Lin Zixin went to the market again. He said he wished to buy 50 kilograms of eagle meat. The saleswoman replied that with such a large large quantity, she could have it delivered to his address. Recognizing him from before, she thought the boy must be from a very extravagant family to buy so much meat. In any case, she asked him to rate her service and, if possible, give her a good review. Lin Zichen thought that, along with the prize money, his writer's salary had been deposited into his account so he could afford the meat. He took advantage of the previously offered discount and bought the 50 kilograms. As soon as he could, he performed the absorption of the vital energy. His system alerted him that he had completed 100% of the Tyrant Eagle's essence. Because of this, he obtained the biological attribute Celestial Eye. With this ability, his vision was enhanced. Now, Lin Zichen literally had an eagle's eye, seeing much better than any ordinary human. Testing the ability for the first time, he managed to see the smartphone screen of a person kilometers away from the top of a building. He concluded that this would be very useful. Upon arriving home, new reports were on the TV. It was being reported that recently, a third-generation genifier had mutated in public, causing hundreds of casualties. Some researchers argued that gene fusion was the wrong path, believing that monster genes should not be combined with human ones. However, others claimed that it was not possible to rely solely on martial arts against such powerful monsters, and that it was more efficient to fight fire with fire. Lin Zichen's father agreed that genifiers were like uncontrollable bombs and often caused disasters. His wife, Zhang Wangxin, said he was worrying for nothing, as the use of these genes was restricted. Therefore, not just anyone could get access to this technology. She claimed the only downside was that the genetically modified lost the ability to have children, so they needed to become parents before undergoing the process. Otherwise, they would never be able to reproduce. Seeing that her son had arrived, Zhang Wangxin became embarrassed for talking about such things in his presence. Changing the subject, his parents said it was time for dinner. As they sat at the table, Lin Zichen mentioned there would be a singing competition the next day, and that his friend would be participating. His parents said they should go and watch. After all, Shen Qinghan was like family. The next day, the time for the competition arrived. Lin Zichen's parents were in the audience cheering, while he helped his friend with her makeup in the dressing room. Just then, Shen Qinghan asked why he was staring at her so intently. Lin Zichen replied that she was very beautiful. This answer made Shen Qinghan blush deeply. Shortly after, Li Chuxian arrived unexpectedly and asked if they were done flirting. Shen Qinghan denied it, stating that Lin Zichen was just helping with her makeup. Li Chuxian said they were practically a couple and shouldn't hide their feelings. She added that she had only stopped by to remind Shen Qinghan that she needed to go on stage. Then Li Chuxian said she would also leave to let her friend get ready. However, Shen Qinghan became quite nervous about the competition. She told her friend that she couldn't hold it together again. Crying, Shen Qinghan despaired and asked what she would do now. She lamented that after so much practice, another last-minute accident had happened and that all her effort would be in vain. However, the protagonist comforted her and asked her to stop crying, as it would smudge her makeup. Then he saw the classroom curtains and had an idea. So he grabbed a pair of scissors and cut a few pieces of the fabric. Quickly, Lin Zichen fashioned a new dress for his friend and told her to go to the restroom to change. Shen Qinghan replied that it would make her late, so she asked her friend to just turn around, as she would change right there. The protagonist was a bit embarrassed, but he did as the girl asked. After putting on the new dress, Shen Qinghan told her friend he could turn back around. She thanked him for going to so much trouble for her, saying that she now felt more encouraged and wouldn't cry anymore. Lin Zichen told his friend to get on stage and rock it, because that's what they had trained for. Surprisingly, Shen Qinghan wasn't fazed by the huge audience and sang beautifully. Due to her brilliant performance, she won the competition, making her friend Lin Zichen proud. Shortly after, someone came into the classroom and asked who cut the curtains. The next day, Lin Zichen was put on cleaning duty, thanks to what he did with the curtains. Just then, his system alerted him that he had completed 1,000 daily tasks and gifted him the socializing monster attribute. Speaking of socializing, his friend became quite popular after winning the contest. Besides making new friends, the victory boosted Shen Qinghan's confidence. Bouncing back, she proved to be much stronger in the following competitions. As for the protagonist, he became the captain of the martial arts team and brought several victories to his university. Because of this, he signed an advertising contract for his friend Hiyu's family dojo. The payment from the advertisement, along with his salary as a writer, gave him the idea to unlock a new skill. Without wasting any time, the protagonist went to the market. This time, he chose to buy the meat of the hidden dragon, a beast known for its concealment ability. By assimilating 100% all at once, he gained the dragon's ability. Now, he possessed a natural camouflage, able to hide from practically anything. The protagonist realized this attribute was very useful, as it could be used for both offense and defense. One day, while walking home, he saw a woman being arrested and at the same time ran into an acquaintance. The protagonist spotted spotted Senior Jiang Kai and also noticed that his legs were now mechanical. Kai explained that after failing to get into the university, he had a motorcycle accident and, because of that, had to have his legs amputated. But luckily, he ended up participating in the Deus Mecha Group's modification program and got new legs. Furthermore, he revealed that the arrested woman was a shadow of the heretics, the only woman among the 9 who remained. After that, Kai said he had to go and said goodbye to Lin Zichen. For his part, the protagonist reflected that, unlike the police, the Deus Mecha Group had been successful against the mutant rats, and he thought it best not to underestimate this group from now on. Then, he received a call from his mother and told her he would be home soon with the cake. Lin Zichen and Shen Qinghan were born one day apart, so their families celebrated their birthdays together. This time was more than special, as they were both turning 18. After blowing out the candles, they exchanged gifts, but before they could open them, an earthquake interrupted the party. The protagonist immediately realized that something abnormal was happening. Meanwhile, beneath the ground, the rats continued to dig their tunnels. News of the earthquake in the city spread quickly, but the tremor didn't cause any serious accidents. The protagonist knows that something like this is unusual for his city, and he quickly deduces that it could only have been caused by some subterranean monster. In any case, he goes to school with his friend as usual. Shen Qinghan says that they are adults now, and that she feels nervous about the changes to come. Meanwhile, Lin Zichen has saved enough money to assimilate the Void Eel's energy. With this, he gains another special ability, now able to sense hostility within a certain range, and also the threat level of each hostile creature. After the assimilation, he decides to go to the mall to test his new capability, but as he walks around, he only senses normal people around him. Not wanting to waste the trip, he thinks about which monster meat he will buy next. He sees the undead worm meat, but finds the pieces too expensive and outside his current budget, realizing he will need to earn more money to assimilate 100% of the energy. Far away in an office, Yuan Dongji, the vice principal of Shanghai University and head of education for the province, receives updates on the overall status. She thanks her assistant for the great work and says the situation has stabilized within parameters, to the point where she has enough time to check the admission exams of the new students. For now, she wants to end the meeting, thinking that it has been some time since she last had a disciple. The entrance exam for the martial arts college lasts a total of 9 days. On the first day, students take the written exam in the morning and are physically assessed in the afternoon. From the 2nd to the 8th day, a combat assessment is conducted, in which all candidates are sent to a forest and must survive for a week. On the last day, they are subjected to an aptitude test for gene fusion and mechanical modifications. Back to the protagonist, the day of the exam arrives and he is ready to be evaluated. Unlike him, his friend is extremely nervous and doesn't want another accident to happen during the tests. However, Lin Zichen comforts her, claiming that Shen Qinghan's theoretical knowledge is very good and that she is prepared for any kind of unforeseen event. At this, Shen Qinghan says she will do her best to pass, and asks her friend to do the same. After a while, he finishes the written test early and gets bored. As soon as he leaves the room, he wonders how Shen Qinghan had done. He finds her in the hallway, and his friend says she did well, but couldn't talk much as she was in a hurry to go to the restroom. Not long after, Lin Zichen is physically assessed and manages to lift a total of 950 kilograms, in addition to doing well in the other exercises, which is truly impressive even for other talented students. Upon meeting Shen Qinghan again, the protagonist asks how she did on the physical test. His friend says she was slightly above average in all the tests, but that it was nothing compared to his results. In turn, Lin Zichen claims that she is one of the best female students and can only improve. At that moment, Yu finds the friends and says that the result of the written exam has just been released. He says he scored 80 points on the test. Shen Qinghan checks her result and says she got 82. To no one's surprise, Lin Zichen got a perfect score, and his friends celebrate his result. As they leave, Shen Qinghan comments that the forest test starts the next day, and she can only imagine the challenges she will face. Lin Zichen says he will be nearby and promises to protect her, no matter the cost. Meanwhile, in a meeting room, a masked man says that the forest assessment will begin the next day and asks the security officer to help control the 10 geniuses. He hands over a box with 10 demonic seeds, claiming they will be of great help. The masked man says that if the officer does well, he could be recommended to the upper echelons. However, the officer replies that he is in no hurry, and that at the moment, he needs an anomalous fruit. The masked man says that such a fruit could help him evolve, but if he joined their organization, he could evolve far beyond what he imagines. Finally, he states that it is much more advantageous to become an official member of the organization than to try to evolve on his own. The protagonist and his friend took a bus to the forest test site. Shen Qinghan slept for almost the entire journey. When they finally arrived, the instructors began to explain the rules. They informed them that point plates were scattered throughout the area and that students could ask to leave at any time, but this would result in elimination. There were also mutant beasts, but they were a challenge reserved only for the most brilliant candidates, and the others were advised not to confront them. The entire test would be monitored by cameras, and of the 100,000 candidates, only half would be approved. A student tried to buy help, but the instructor warned him, saying that explicitly forming teams was not allowed. However, she clarified that there was no rule prohibiting students from helping each other or even stealing from one another. After the instructions, several girls tried to team up with the protagonist, but he ignored them all. It was then that a student approached and asked if he could buy some food from Lin Zichen. The protagonist replied that he didn't need money and simply shared some of his food with him. The student, who introduced himself as Hong Jumping, said he couldn't accept it for free, and in return, asked if he could form a team with Lin Zichen. The protagonist refused, saying he wasn't interested. Faced with the refusal, the young man thanked him for the food and went on his way. Shen Qinghan commented that there were several food stalls scattered around the area and asked why that boy had approached Lin Zichen instead of going to one of them. Lin Zichen explained that the boy's real interest wasn't him, but the beautiful girl by his side. In any case, he said it was time to get started and that he wanted to get a head start. To help his friend get into the rhythm, Lin Zichen decided not to go too deep into the forest at first, choosing instead to look for plates on the outskirts of the area. Using his special eyes, which gave him long-range vision, the protagonist spotted a plate high up in a tree and asked Shen Qinghan to get it. His friend celebrated the achievement. Soon after, the protagonist spotted several other plates nearby, and together, they quickly found them all. However, amidst their excitement, Hong Jumping appeared, claiming it was a coincidence to run into them again. He claimed to have gotten 28 points and said he wanted to repay the food by sharing the plates with them. Lin Zichen realized the boy was just trying to get closer to Shen Qinghan and wanted to convince them to team up. The protagonist, however, reiterated that he had no interest in teaming up, but that he would accept the plates the boy offered. Hearing this, Hong Jumping became furious. He tried to attack the protagonist, shouting that he was crossing the line. Lin Zichen didn't disagree, but he also didn't let himself be hit easily. He simply knocked the attacker down and left him on the ground, walking away with the plates. After that, he and his friend continued deeper into the forest in search of more plates. Along the way, the protagonist also taught his friend how to hunt wild boars using a makeshift weapon made of bamboo. Besides the meat, they also gathered some fruit. Together, they defeated a few other participants who tried to ambush them. When they felt tired, they set up a makeshift camp and leaned on each other to rest. Sometime later, they finally reached the mutant beast zone, located in the center of the forest. However, Shen Qinghan noted that they might have arrived too late, as there were no beasts in sight. The girl commented that if they had arrived earlier, they could have earned the title of genius by defeating the mutant beast. However, the protagonist stated there was nothing to worry about, as that title didn't mean much. He then thought it would be better to return to the main trail. Besides, he thought that with so many cameras in the area, he wouldn't be able to absorb the beast's essence if he defeated it. After the combat assessment ended, the gene fusion compatibility test began immediately. The students were led to the research island and formed a line at the entrance. One by one, they were evaluated. Shen Qinghan asked if those reagents were used for the tests. The protagonist confirmed, explaining that they were genes from the giant cloud jellyfish. This beast has a high compatibility with humans, which makes it easier to use in the tests. The researchers take a blood sample from the student and mix it with a bit of the jellyfish reagent. Based on the degree of the reaction, it's possible to determine whether the candidate is suitable for fusion or not. When it was his turn, Yu said he hoped to be compatible, as his wish was to fuse with mechanical modifications. Li Choxin commented that she had heard the process involving mechanics is very painful, and that she wouldn't want to go through something like that. In any case, they both hoped to pass the test. Shen Qinghan was the first of the group to be tested. A while later, they waited for the results in the waiting room. The protagonist overheard some students celebrating their results, while others lamented their low compatibility. He thought that the prodigy from Jingdu University had a compatibility of 16%, so he believed he could achieve a higher percentage at the very least. His friend, however, was extremely nervous about the result. Even as he tried to reassure her, the protagonist knew that if she wasn't compatible, they would no longer be able to study together. Just then, Li Chuxin finds out he has 10% compatibility, while Yu gets 11. Lin Zichen says their results should be out by now too. However, his friend is too scared to check, already imagining the worst. So, he decides to check his first and sees he has 15% compatibility. His friend celebrates, saying that with a result like that, he must have the highest percentage in the province. However, he thinks this result is lower than he expected and concludes that physical strength isn't the only determining factor for compatibility. Now, he thinks it's best for his friend to see her result as well. Worried, she doesn't even want to look and asks her friend to do it for her. However, he's startled. He sees that his friend's result is higher than his. Shen Qinghan got 21%. A while later in the provincial education headquarters building, the vice director is analyzing the results of the recent tests. She sees Lin Zichen's result and considers it impressive, as it might be the highest this year. Director Bai is congratulated for having such a talented student. However, among the results, one in particular catches everyone's attention and shocks all those present. They see Shen Qinghan's result and wonder if it's even possible. Even Director Bai is stunned, as her biggest bet was on Lin Zichen, not his friend. The vice director asks what kind of student this Shen Qinghan is. Bai replies that, surprisingly, Shen Qinghan's overall performance is quite average, and she suspects there must have been an error in the results. Hearing this, Yuan Dongji says she will investigate the situation personally. Back on the island, Shen Qinghan also believes her assessment is wrong, but her friend disagrees. He explains that Shen Qinghan has a natural affinity for water, and the giant cloud jellyfish used in the test is an aquatic beast. Hearing this, Shen Qinghan asks if she's some kind of genius compatible with water attributes. Her friend confirms that she is, and she starts to feel better. Suddenly, they are both startled. They see someone arriving abruptly on top of a wave. Some students recognize the newcomer as Yuan Dongji, the dragon woman, and are frightened by her presence. The vice director is recognized and received with honor by the facility's staff. After all, she belongs to the Yuan clan, known for fusing with the dragon gene. Then, Yuan Dongji approaches Shen Qinghan, leaving the girl quite frightened, and asks for 3 more blood samples for further testing. After the samples are collected, her friend asks if she's okay after having so much blood drawn. She says she is, and soon after, she's called over by one of the researchers. In the vice director's office, Yuan Dongji informs her that the results are in, and there's no doubt about Shen Qinghan's compatibility. Getting straight to the point, Yuan Dongji invites her to be her disciple. Shen Qinghan, who has barely processed everything, is speechless. The vice director claims that if she accepts, Shen Qinghan will be able to ride the waves just as she did when she arrived. Shen Qinghan says the offer is very sudden and asks for some time to think about it. Yuan Dongji insists, saying there are only benefits, as she is the head of the Education Institute and vice director of the city's university. As her disciple, Shen Qinghan will be able to attend the institution. Under so much pressure, the girl can't refuse. Then, the vice director asks for Shen Qinghan's contact number. She gives her number, realizing she has already become submissive to the situation. Yuan Dongji reveals she has another disciple, who started 10 years ago but is about the same age as Shen Qinghan. She asks her new disciple to consider the other one as a sister, and sends a photo of her, saying the two will meet in person soon. Upon seeing the photo, Shen Qinghan recognizes the girl. It's her old schoolmate, Bai Shui. She tells her new master that she already knows her, and Yuan Dongji asks how that happened. Shen Qinghan explains that years ago, she had a classmate named Bai Shui, but the girl didn't stay at the school for long before she was transferred. The vice director finds the story hard to believe. In any case, she says she needs to examine her new student thoroughly to see if there's anything special about her body. After conducting the physical analysis, Yuan Dongji comments that the girl's body is almost too normal. Despite this, she states that she will keep Shen Qinghan's result a secret. In the official records, a compatibility number lower than the real one will be listed. This is for the girl's own safety. Now that they have exchanged contact information, the vice director dismisses her new apprentice. As soon as Shen Qinghan leaves the room, Yuan Dongji calls her father. She informs him that she has taken the special girl as her disciple, and upon investigation, discovered that she and Lin Zichen are friends. Her father is pleased with the news, stating that the two of them are destined for great things and that it's good to keep them close. However, he asks that no one else find out about this. A while later, the protagonist learns of what happened and finds it strange that Shen Qinghan was recruited by a master so quickly. However, he decides not to worry too much and tells her to act naturally. He assures her that, regardless, he will always be nearby to protect her. Soon after, they meet up with their mothers, who were waiting for them. The families prepare to go to a restaurant to celebrate their children's success. Once there, they toast to their accomplishment, and afterward, each family goes home. That night, the protagonist's mother answers the door and asks if Shen Qinghan has come to spend the night again. Embarrassed, Shen Qinghan explains that she didn't come to stay the night with her friend, but to talk about something important that needed to be said in person. The protagonist's mother lets her in, finding the girl's shyness endearing. As soon as she's inside, Shen Qinghan goes straight to Lin Zichen's room to talk. She says it's about her master, Yuan Dongji. Shen Qinghan explains that her master analyzed her body but found nothing different from a normal person. Furthermore, she also didn't discover that her body is impervious to water. Lin Zichen finds this strange, as Yuan Dongji has such great control over water that she should have noticed her apprentice's ability. The protagonist realizes his friend's body is more mysterious than it seems, but asks her to keep it a secret for now. He explains that while it's good for them to get stronger, it's even better to keep their secrets between themselves. Shen Qinghan continues, saying she also discovered that her master has another disciple. She shows him a photo, certain it must be Bai Shui, their former classmate. The protagonist recognizes the resemblance, but notices that the person's aura in the photo is completely different. He asks her if she knows where the photo was taken. Shen Qinghan says she doesn't, but she can ask her master. Her master replies via message, revealing that the place is called Yuandi and that her new apprentice will learn more at the right time. Hearing this, the protagonist concludes it's best if they aren't too hasty. Then, Shen Qinghan lies down on her friend's bed and asks if all men like women who wear tight dresses. The protagonist immediately wonders if this idea came from her new master. He replies that it depends on the woman and the dress. However, Shen Qinghan pushes for a more direct answer. Pressured, Lin Zichen admits that he likes women in dresses. His friend then asks if he prefers white or black tights. Lin Zichen doesn't understand why she's asking so many questions, but replies that between the two, he prefers black. With that, Shen Qinghan seems to have gotten the answers she needed. At that moment, the protagonist's mother, Zhang Wangxin, knocks on the door. She hands her a bag that Shen Qinghan's mother had left for her. Embarrassed, the girl says she didn't intend to sleep over and doesn't understand why her mother brought it in advance. Zhang Wangxin replies that they're both adults and don't need to worry about it, then wishes them a good night. Despite her embarrassment, Shen Qinghan decides it's best to just sleep over. She starts checking the bag her mother sent and finds a strange item. When she sees what it is, she quickly hides it, wondering why on earth her mother would have sent such a thing. Flustered, she says she'd better get changed for bed, leaving the protagonist confused and clueless about what was going on. Sometime later, Lin Zichen and Shen Qinghan are accepted into the evolution course at Shanghai University. The two leave the house together on their bikes, as they had both signed a contract with Hyu's family's martial arts dojo. But on their way to the promotional event, they are intercepted by a group of men. The group's leader approaches and asks him directly if he is Lin Zichen. Before confirming, the protagonist asks who he's speaking with. The man introduces himself as Liu Chuanwu, the coordinator of the martial arts course at Shanghai University, and says he is there as a representative of the Celestial Man Pavilion. The Celestial Man Pavilion is a conservative organization that opposes gene fusion and mechanical modifications. They are popular online, but they also have many opponents who call them charlatans. Liu Chuanwu invites the protagonist to join his group. Lin Zichen refuses, but the leader insists, asking for a moment to talk, and even offering him a state-of-the-art smartphone. During their conversation, Liu Chuanwu explains that in his pavilion, they research how to unlock the potential of pure-blooded humans without the need for genetic modifications. Their goal is to break through the barriers of the normal biological level and evolve into an advanced life form. He claims they have already achieved surprising results and shows the protagonist a video. In the video, the pavilion's leader, who supposedly has a Tier 9 biological level, defeats a genetically modified opponent with a much higher power level. Lin Zichen recognizes the opponent. It's Wu Tiancheng, the same man who single-handedly wiped out the rat god cult. Despite his superior power level, Wu Tiancheng wasn't able to even harm his opponent. On the contrary, he was defeated with a single punch. Liu Chuanwu argues that the human body is incredible on its own and doesn't need to borrow power from other races. Lin Zichen himself is in disbelief at what he's seeing. At this, Liu Chuanwu assures him that there is no editing or trickery in the video and even invites the protagonist to watch their next confrontation live. He says he would love to post videos like this online, but powerful people have stopped him, as those in power in the country want to promote the genetically modified and completely ignore his pavilion. That's why he's trying to popularize his group through other means, and having someone like Lin Zichen on their side would be very helpful. Liu Chuanwu claims the pavilion's leader has already reached his maximum potential, but he believes a talented young man like Lin Zichen could go far beyond that. Furthermore, he reveals that the leader, despite looking no older than 60, is actually almost 100 years old, all thanks to their method. Liu Chuanwu says that if the protagonist doesn't believe him, he can look him up on the Qiandu Encyclopedia. The protagonist does the research and discovers that the body tempering method can indeed prolong a person's life. He also reads that in his youth, Liu Chuanwu was a master of the Liu family, one of the most prominent martial arts clans in Nanjiang province. However, when the era of gene fusion began, they failed to adapt, and the family fell into decline. Liu Chuanwu was eventually abandoned by his wife and children because he insisted on not following the path of gene fusion, while his family chose the opposite. The protagonist reflects that, in his case, Shen Qinghan would never abandon him, as that's the true bond childhood friends share. Speaking of which, he notices that Liu Chuanwu's ex-wife is none other than Yuan Dongji, his friend's master. Thus, he realizes he shouldn't underestimate the man. For his part, Liu Chuanwu argues that his appearance, much younger than his actual age, is proof that his method works. He claims that borrowing power from beasts means humans will never be able to surpass them. Liu Chuanwu states that if humanity doesn't stop this, the day will come when it will be overtaken by its enemies. That's why he and his pavilion refuse to follow this path, as they intend to offer a better solution. Therefore, he insists that the protagonist join him, claiming that with their combined strength, they can convince others to elevate humanity to a new level. Liu Chuanwu believes that Lin Zichen could be the first pure-blooded human to break through the barriers of the normal ranks. The protagonist then asks more about the body tempering method. Liu Chuanwu explains that the technique comes from an ancient ruin and uses a person's qi and blood to temper the body, strengthening it and increasing combat power. He adds that the method is also an art, and for that reason, genetically modified people cannot use it, as their blood is considered impure. After hearing the explanation, the protagonist says he still doesn't have enough information to agree to undergo the method, and that he'd rather wait a bit. The pavilion leader insists, saying that although the method takes time to understand, with the protagonist's talent, he could reach a potential far beyond his own. Liu Chuanwu continues, explaining that for ordinary people, those with high genetic compatibility are considered geniuses. However, for his pavilion, these percentages mean nothing. Upon learning that the protagonist was the best in the physical assessment, Liu Chuanwu was certain he was the most promising student in the province. He then states that, unlike the girl beside him, Lin Zichen has true potential from his pavilion's point of view. Shen Qinghan, who had been quiet until then, wonders why she is being dragged into the conversation. Regardless, the protagonist defends his friend, saying she achieved the highest compatibility percentage in the province and shouldn't be dismissed. He accepts the smartphone as a gift, but announces that he's leaving. Desperate, Liu Chuanwu asks for just a 6-month trial, guaranteeing that after this period, the protagonist will see the results. He adds that during this time, his pavilion can triple any benefits the evolution course has offered. Upon hearing the proposal, the protagonist becomes interested and finally agrees to go through the evaluation period. Liu Chuanwu is happy to have convinced him, but knows he will now have to invest a large sum of money. Next, the protagonist asks if he has ever heard of a place called Yuandi. The pavilion owner is surprised by the question, but replies that Yuandi is the place some believe to be the origin of life. According to him, all mutant beasts originated from there. Lin Zichen realizes that Yuandi means origin land, and discovers that humanity does in fact already know how to enter this place. Furthermore, Liu Chuanwu explains that the monster meat sold in the market come from Yuandi, as otherwise there wouldn't be enough for everyone. He also mentions that any electronic equipment stops working inside, and that the best way to record something is through a realistic painting. At that moment, Lin Zichen finally understands the origin of that photo. In the middle of the conversation, his phone rings. It's the person in charge of the promotional event, wanting to know when they will arrive. Lin Zichen replies that they are already on their way. He tells the pavilion leader that he needs to go, but they can finish their conversation later. Before Lin Zichen leaves, the leader hands him a translated copy of the blood tempering art, which contains detailed cultivation methods. However, he warns him that he needs to reach Tier 4 and have enough qi in his body before he can start using it. Liu Chuanwu knows the boy is close to reaching that level, and suggests he use the summer vacation to read the book. Lin Zichen thinks to himself that since he is already at Tier 6, it won't be that difficult to start practicing this technique. Sometime later, in another place, a girl was practicing martial arts until Liu Chuanwu approached. The girl asked why her teacher looked so happy. He replied that, thanks to his charisma, he had managed to convince the strongest student from the province's physical assessment assessment to join the pavilion. Even though she was surprised, the girl did not really believe that talk about charisma. Then, Liu Chuanwu admitted that he had offered benefits, promising to pay triple what the evolution course offered, which made his student furious. Liu Chuanwu defended himself, saying he had arranged a meeting with 3 wealthy women and that this would be enough to secure the income they needed. Changing the subject, he asked how long it had taken his student to feel her own qi. She answered that it took about a week after starting her training. Liu Chuanwu himself had taken twice as long, which made him think his student was truly a prodigy. However, she lamented that ever since she gave up on gene fusion to join the pavilion, she had not yet evolved into an advanced form, even after 10 years of dedication. Liu Chuanwu comforted her, telling her not to let it bother her. He stated that although the process was slow, once she reached the advanced level, no one would question her strength. She retorted that she had already gone through 2 body temperings, but still had not opened a single meridian, and questioned if this Lin Zichen would really be better than her. The leader replied that the boy's physical assessment data was extremely positive, and that he anticipated a major breakthrough from him. Hearing this, the student said that as his senior, she would have to dedicate herself to teaching the rookie how to use the method. Back at home, Lin Zichen began to read the book. It did not take him more than a few seconds to feel his qi. The next step was to control the qi in his blood to begin the body tempering. He started with his arm, and his system alerted him that his body's proficiency was increasing. A few minutes after tempering his right arm, he decided to test his resistance. He noticed that ordinary blades could no longer cut him, and figured this was exactly what had protected Liu Chuanwu from the mutant's attacks. He then concluded that he could achieve the same result by tempering his entire body. After a few hours, he had only managed to temper both arms, and calculated that it would take about a week to temper his whole body. In the middle of his training, his friend sent him a message. She asked him to come over to her house because she had prepared a surprise. Lin Zichen was surprised by such a late-night invitation, but he went to her house anyway. Upon arriving, Xu Meng let him in, saying that her daughter was in her room. After entering his friend's room, Lin Zichen found it strange to see her completely covered by a sheet. She said she had prepared a surprise but was too embarrassed to show it. For his part, he wondered what kind of surprise this could be. However, he knew Shen Qinghan and knew she would not do anything indecent. Regardless, his friend asked him to lift the cover and take a look. Even though he felt awkward, Lin Zichen did just that. Upon lifting the cover, Lin Zichen saw his friend wearing a dress. Shen Qinghan asked if the outfit suited her and, feeling very awkward, he answered yes. The girl then said she had also bought black pantyhose and asked if he wanted to see her wearing them. Without hesitation, the protagonist agreed. After she got dressed, Lin Zichen complimented her, saying she looked great and that the pantyhose also matched perfectly. His friend commented that the pantyhose were very comfortable and invited him to touch them to feel the texture. He touched them and agreed that they were indeed very comfortable. At that moment, Shen Qinghan let him know that Lin Zichen's mother had left a bag outside so he could sleep over. The protagonist took the bag and, upon seeing the contents, realized his mother was getting way ahead of herself, since they were not even dating. Anyway, Shen Qinghan said she was going to change for bed and asked him not to peek. A while later, the two were already in the same bed. Lin Zichen commented that the smell was very pleasant and asked if she had put something on the sheets. His friend replied that it was just her natural scent, and if he did not believe her, he could come closer to smell it. He did as she asked, but as he got closer, a romantic mood sparked between them, and they shared their first kiss. However, Shen Qinghan suddenly felt something strange. She got up thinking she had had some kind of accident, but noticed that although she was wet, the sensation was different from what usually happened. Lin Zichen asked if she had felt a very strong emotional shift. She confirmed that, because of what happened, her heart had raced and she ended up getting too excited. Lin Zichen said that was exactly what he suspected. Apparently, his friend's unknown power was related to her spiritual power, and she might be starting to control it unintentionally. He added that, with enough training, she would be able to learn to use this ability freely. However, for now, he thought it was best for them to go to sleep and try to figure out more about it later. The next day, Shen Qinghan's mother prepared breakfast and invited Lin Zichen to eat with them. Lin Zichen accepted but commented that his friend had not woken up yet. Shen Qinghan's father then said that his daughter should be as disciplined as him. However, Lin Zichen defended the girl, saying that she had achieved the highest compatibility percentage in the province and therefore deserved to sleep a little more during the vacation. After eating, he said goodbye to his hosts. As soon as he leaves, Xu Meng comments to her husband that she woke up in the middle of the night and noticed the two of them were awake. She then asks if he thinks their daughter has finally grown up. The father agrees that she has, and shortly after, Xu Meng calls Lin Zichen's Zichen's mother to gossip about the matter. Meanwhile, Lin Zichen arrives home and decides to wash the clothes he wore the night before. But as he is getting ready to leave, his mother appears looking very happy and congratulates him on a job well done, leaving the boy completely confused. Far from there, a group of people approach the pavilion leader, Liu Chuanwu, to question him regarding Lin Zichen. Liu Chuanwu pretends not to know what they are talking about. However, the person in charge of the evolution course accuses him, stating that Lin Zichen was about to become his student, until Liu Chuanwu used underhanded tactics to lure him in with a lie. Annoyed, Liu Chuanwu retorts that the evolution course is not the only one trying to recruit new students, and claims he has done nothing wrong. The two continue arguing for a while. Liu Chuanwu defends himself, saying he made a fair invitation and that the final decision rests with the boy himself. His opponent, however, states that Liu Chuanwu is not worthy of speaking about fairness and challenges him to a duel. The pavilion leader refuses, saying he is not crazy enough to accept, as their power levels are vastly different. Furious, the rival claims there is no escaping evolution through genes and leaves. Even so, he does not give up on defeating the pavilion and thinks that sooner or later it will happen. Following that, he goes to complain to the vice principal, but she reassures him, saying it will not be long before Lin Zichen forgets about the pavilion and accepts gene fusion. Principal Ma Zhenhe, however, insists that is not the point. To him, Liu Chuanwu broke the rules and must be punished. The vice principal then suggests that the best revenge would be for Ma Zhenhe to try and recruit the runner-up for himself, taking her away from Liu Chuanwu. Convinced, Ma Zhenhe decides to go along with this plan. Observing the situation, the vice principal Yuan Dongji thinks that her ally Ma Zhenhe is normally stable, but completely loses control when facing his rival, to the point of going crazy. She also reflects that, after so many years, Liu Chuanwu has not changed at all and still has a sharp tongue. Yuan Dongji imagines that he could be much stronger, perhaps even becoming the principal instead of Ma Zhenhe, but by denying the path of mutation, he chose to remain weak. Back to Lin Zichen, he is running alongside Shen Qinghan. The girl, however, does not have the same stamina as him. Seeing this, Lin Zichen offers her water and asks her to hydrate.
He says they have run enough and that he will help her relax her muscles. Shen Qinghan then lies down on a park bench. Lin Zichen approaches and helps her with her leg muscles. She thanks him for the help. However, Lin Zichen replies that, considering their relationship, a thank you is too formal. Hearing this, Shen Qinghan asks if, in other words, he is saying the two of them are dating now.
Lin Zichen says they are like family, however. That was not what Shen Qinghan wanted to hear. So, she asks if she can be his fiancé. Lin Zichen replies that it is fine with him. Shen Qinghan makes him do a pinky promise, that when they both graduate from college, they will get married. He agrees, knowing that once promised, he will not be able to take it back. Sometime later, Lin Zichen is at home with his family. His father goes to answer the door upon hearing the doorbell ring. There, he finds Principal Ma and asks what he is doing there. Ma Jenny apologizes for intruding so late, but explains he needs to talk to Lin Zichen about an important matter. Lin Zichen's father thinks his son has already made his choice and does not understand the reason for such insistence. The principal then hands over a fresh fish he bought on the way, saying it is a gift for the boy's parents. Following that, he goes inside to talk. In the living room, the principal tells Lin Zichen that he has a bright future by genetically fusing with a beast, and that there is no need to resort to other methods. He adds that, although the intentions of the Celestial Human Pavilion are good, their theory does not hold up, as to this day they have not presented any results from their studies. Because of this, he does not want a boy as talented as Lin Zichen to waste time on useless methods, and advises him to delve deeper into genetic modifications. Hearing this, Lin Zichen's mother says she does not understand, as she thought her son was enrolled in the evolution school. Lin Zichen explains that he forgot to mention it, but that he has joined the Celestial Human Pavilion. He says that, because of this, he changed his enrollment to follow the path of pure blood. His mother is frightened by the news. However, Lin Zichen claims he felt sincerity when speaking with the pavilion's leader, who offered him triple the benefits of the evolution school. He warns, however, that if he doesn't feel any progress in 6 months, he will leave the pavilion and follow the path of evolution. Ma Zhenhe was unaware of his rival's proposal and becomes furious upon discovering he had offered something so tempting. He argues that triple the benefits might seem like a lot, but in the long run, it's nothing compared to the advantages a genetically modified person possesses. Lin Zichen thanks the director for his advice, but states that he will at least get to know the pavilion better during these 6 months, and that he might even change his path afterward. The director realizes the young man is determined, and that there's no point in trying to convince him. So, he leaves, as there is is nothing more to be said. The next day, Lin Zichen checks the daily news. He sees a report that the Celestial Man Pavilion had brainwashed the province's second-place student, convincing him to abandon the path of genetic modification. Lin Zichen knows the news is referring to him. The article also mentions the champion from Jingdu, who was a genius but fell into obscurity after joining the pavilion. Besides becoming a target for the pavilion's opponents, his personal information was also exposed, which, he imagines, puts him in the crosshairs of the heretics. He suspects Director Ma was the one who exposed him. Still, he tries to resolve the situation by filing a report. 2 hours later, the post was deleted. However, once something is on the internet, it stays there forever. Moreover, Lin Zichen realizes that the pavilion's opponents are persistent and have leaked much more of his information, making his situation even more complicated. At nightfall, Shen Qing'an appeared in Lin Zichen's room to sleep with him. She said she was very upset seeing the lies being told about him, stating that those people had no dignity. Shen Qing'an then mentioned that her master was quite influential and might be able to help. Lin Zichen, however, argued that the vice director was part of the genetically modified faction and was also against the pavilion, so there would be no reason for her to help him. Even so, Shen Qing'an insisted it was worth a try. 30 minutes later, her master informed her that the situation was resolved. Shen Qing'an noticed that there was no longer any content related to Lin Zichen on the internet and found it extraordinary. Even Lin Zichen was surprised. He didn't understand why the vice director would help him, as she seemed to have no reason to do so. Shen Qing'an said she would thank her master on his behalf, but now she needed to be repaid as well. As a thank you, the two of them kissed. Sometime later, Lin Zichen reached level 7 and finally finished tempering the entire skin of his body. Furthermore, upon checking his stats, he realized he was stronger than any boy his age. After absorbing the life essence of 9 different creatures, he felt practically like a genetically modified person. He also knew that upon being genetically modified, Shen Qing'an would become infertile. Therefore, she would need to freeze her eggs if she wanted to have a child through fertilization in the future. A few days later, Shen Qing'an went to the hospital for egg retrieval. The doctor informed her that she had already received the injection to induce ovulation and asked her to return the next day for the freezing procedure. Besides her friend Li Chuxin also went to the hospital and underwent the same procedure. Li Chuxin commented that she was very nervous, but now she wanted to go shopping to relieve the tension, and she invited Shen Qing'an to go with her. Lin Zichen was also invited, but he said he had other plans. While the girls went out to have fun, Lin Zichen went home and began tempering his muscles. He realized this process was even more painful than tempering his skin. After spending the entire afternoon tempering his arms, he was exhausted. To regain his energy, he ate a lot. Afterward, he noticed that just tempering the muscles of his right arm had already given him a strength boost. Now, it was just a matter of time until he did the same with the rest of his body. At that moment, Shen Qing'an arrived at his house. She told him that Li Chuxin had invited all their friends to go out before classes resumed and had insisted that Lin Zichen come along. He replied that if Shen Qing'an was going, he would go too. However, the girl explained that her friend had invited them to the beach. She didn't want to spoil anyone's fun, so she felt awkward refusing. Shen Qing'an was uneasy because the last time she swam in the sea, she heard strange voices. She didn't want to repeat the experience and dreaded going back to the beach. In any case, Lin Zichen reassured her, saying he would be nearby if anything bad happened, and that, if possible, they could simply not go into the water. Far away, underground, the evil ogre approached an altar. He said that, as agreed, he had made the rats dig 108 tunnels, but now he needed the masked man to place a biological coordinate on the altar. The masked man used a staff to dig a hole, and then bathed the object in his own blood. The ogre then explained that they now needed to wait for Yuandi to find the corresponding boundary point and place an identical biological coordinate. Once the coordinates sensed each other, the tunnels could be connected. A short time later, the group of friends hits the road, with Heiyu driving toward the beach. He mentions that as soon as the vacation started, he studied for his driver's license and offers to recommend the course if the others are interested. Naturally, everyone becomes interested in getting their licenses too. When they got to the beach, Heiyu was the most excited of all, since he had the best view. Annoyed, Li Chuxin scolded him, telling him not to get so worked up. She then announced she was taking her friend to change into their swimsuits. Heiyu told Lin Zichen they should do the same, as he wanted to swim too. On the way, some people recognized Lin Zichen, commenting that he was the runner-up who joined the pavilion after supposedly being brainwashed. Annoyed, Heiyu retorted that they had no right to judge the province's second best and should just keep quiet. Lin Zichen, however, said there was no need to cause a scene and that it was better to just move on. He commented that his friend was quite calm. Lin Zichen replied that he doesn't get angry easily, but he would definitely act if the situation were more serious. Hearing this, Lee Chuxin remarked that Lin Zichen must be referring to her best friend. With that, He finally realized that his friend cared more about Shen Qinghan than him. After they changed, Lin Zichen asked Shen Qinghan if she wanted help with the sunscreen, and the girl accepted. Then, he gently helped her apply the sunscreen. He watched the scene in admiration and tried to do the same with Li Chuxin, but she refused his help. Meanwhile, Shen Qinghan started hearing voices again. Startled, she suddenly stood up, claiming the voice was coming from the sea. She explained that the voice mentioned something about the resurrection of a great god, and also about the Yundi. Lin Zichen considered that they had too little information to deduce anything, and needed to investigate further. For now, he suggested leaving things as they were, and advised Shen Qinghan to subtly talk to her master about the matter. Sometime later, Lin Zichen managed to temper all his muscles and moved on to the bone tempering stage. He quickly discovered, however, that the pain of tempering his bones was far greater than that of his muscles or skin. Despite the extreme exhaustion, he managed to complete the process. His system alerted him of his progress, and Lin Zichen figured he was very close to becoming an advanced life form. He knew that to evolve, he needed to open at least one of his body's meridians, but the information about it in the book was very vague. Therefore, he would have to figure out how to do it on his own. A few days later, he went out with Shen Qinghan and her parents. They went to a place they used to frequent as children. Excited, Shen Qinghan said she wanted a milkshake, and Lin Zichen took the opportunity to get some ice cream as well. However, during their outing, he noticed something strange. Nearby, in a bar, a man was surrounded by several women. A friend of his asked him to behave, but neither the man nor the women around him seemed to have any discreet intentions. The shop window where they were was transparent, allowing people outside to see everything. Some commented that Huang Jiaxin acts like a cold goddess in the fine arts course, but at the first opportunity, she threw herself into the arms of the guys from the evolution course. Lin Zichen overheard the comment and reflected on the matter for a moment. He knew that the city's university was divided into two campuses, the outer campus, for liberal arts and fine arts students, and the inner campus, for evolution and martial arts students. As the inner campus was shrouded in secrecy, it wasn't open to the public and its entrance was restricted. Lin Zichen's mother said they would have a bit more freedom after classes started, but she warned them not to mix with rowdy students. Lin Zichen's father, in turn, stated that his son had been friends with Shen Qinghan since childhood, and that they would look out for each other, showing his confidence in them both. Knowing that adults couldn't enter the inner campus, the parents told the young ones to go on ahead. When they reached the gate, a guard demanded their credentials. Shen Qinghan went first, and the guard authorized her entry. However, when it was Lin Zichen's turn, the guard said he didn't need to identify himself, as he already knew him as the runner-up who had joined the Heavenly Man Pavilion. They both entered without any trouble. Inside the inner campus, people who had undergone gene fusion and mechanical modifications walked around normally. After filling out the registration form, the two headed to the dormitories. Lin Zichen walked Shen Qinghan to her dorm, since they would be staying in separate ones. However, as he headed to his own dorm, he was surrounded by girls asking for his contact information. Just then, an upperclassman appeared to guide him around the campus. She showed him around the place and also explained the student power rankings. Lin Zichen noticed there were two rankings, an elite ranking with 500 students and another for freshmen with only 100. The top three in each ranking were very strong, and he knew he would have to work hard if he wanted to surpass them. His guide, Song Yuyan, told him that the martial arts course was ranked 6th, and that, just like Lin Zichen, she had also been the second best in the exams. However, Song Yuyan had entered the pure blood path, stagnated, and was soon surpassed by the students who had undergone gene fusion. Finally, they arrive at Lin Zichen's dormitory. His guide remarks that the perks of being a top student are excellent, as he was even given an entire room to himself. She then mentions feeling quite hot from the walk, and asks if she can use his shower. Lin Zichen replies that he saw a place nearby selling iced tea and offers to buy her one to cool off. His guide is satisfied with the offer, accepting the tea as payment for her help. Shortly after, Lin Zichen receives photos of his friend's dormitory and is stunned. Compared to the luxury apartment she was given, his private room is nothing. He realizes the evolution path is truly financially superior. He shows his room to Shen Qinghan, who tells him her place is much larger and could easily house them both. Shen Qinghan invites him to move in with her, and Lin Zichen doesn't hesitate to accept. Seeing both dorms was all it took to convince him. There was no doubt now that the evolution path was wealthier. He then wonders if the pavilion leader can actually deliver on the promise promise to triple their benefits. A while later, he arrives at Shen Qinghan's dormitory. She tells him the place is nice and cool because she turned on the air conditioning. Seeing the spacious room, Lin Zichen comments that Shen Qinghan's master must truly care for her. The girl agrees, adding that now the two of them can live together without any adults watching over them. She then says she's sweaty and is going to take a shower. Meanwhile, Lin Zichen figures he has some free time and decides to check out the university's app. He discovers it has a store where anyone can purchase evolution resources using credits. To earn these credits, students need to complete tasks, climb the rankings, or win competitions. He figures this must be easier than earning actual money. Shen Qinghan calls out that she's finished her shower and asks Lin Zichen to grab her clean clothes. The young man brings them to her. However, Shen Qinghan is feeling so comfortable with him around that she invites him to join her in the bath. At first, Lin Zichen is a bit shy about the invitation, but on second thought, he decides it would be a waste to pass up the opportunity. So he gets into the bathtub to help her. After their bath, the protagonist begins the second stage of his skin tempering. He realizes this part is much more difficult than the first, as it took him 2 hours just to complete his right hand. Because of this, he asks Shen Qinghan to borrow a sewing needle, explaining that he needs to test his skin's durability. When she sees that the needle can't even penetrate Lin Zichen's skin, Shen Qinghan is impressed. She remarks that the needle actually broke and even considers trying the pure blood path herself. Next, the protagonist decides to test his fire resistance. Although he can feel the heat, his skin doesn't burn, making him realize just how incredible this ability is. After his tests, he receives a message from the pavilion leader. It says someone is being sent to pick him up, as the leader needs to see him in person. Lin Zichen tells Shen Qinghan he's going to visit the pavilion leader. On his way out, he decides it's best to wait in a tree for the person from the pavilion to arrive. While he's waiting, a student recognizes him as the second-place ranker who joined the Celestial Man Pavilion. The protagonist realizes he's quite popular among the other students. The student introduces himself as a fan, claiming that Lin Zichen has the potential to become one of the pavilion's greatest. After a brief chat, the fan takes his leave. A short time later, a woman on a motorcycle pulls up and finds Lin Zichen. She introduces herself as Song Yuyan, a martial arts instructor and a researcher for the pavilion, sent to bring him to the headquarters. The protagonist recognizes her name and realizes he's standing before the woman he's heard so much about, the one who, like him, had rejected the evolution path, only to end up stagnating. They head to the headquarters on her motorcycle, and along the way, the protagonist says he feels honored that someone so important came to pick him up. During the ride, Song Yuyan asks why she found him at the evolution course dormitory instead of his own official lodging. Lin Zichen explains that his girlfriend is an evolution course student, so he's living with her. As soon as they arrive, Song Yuyan shows him the institute's lounge area, a space where members can rest and relax with unlimited food and drinks. They continue the tour until he asks why the place is so empty. Song Yuyan explains that the pavilion has never been famous and that the university provides them with few resources, which discourages many students from joining. She reveals that besides herself and Lin Zichen, the only other members are the director and 3 senior students from the martial arts course. At that moment, he wonders if all the people with the pavilion leader on selection day were just actors. In any case, he thinks everything will be fine as long as he fulfills his part of the deal. Next, they meet the leader, Liu Chuanwu, who looks completely exhausted. He says he spent almost 6 months researching how to open the meridians, but has made no progress yet. However, he believes that now that Lin Zichen is with them, it's only a matter of time before they make a breakthrough. Liu Chuanwu comments that Song Yuyan and Lin Zichen are quite similar, and hopes they get along well. He reveals that it was thanks to Song Yuyan's observations that he managed to evolve to the 9th level, learning a great deal from her. Therefore, he imagines that Lin Zichen's breakthroughs and discoveries will also help everyone, just like his seniors did. Finally, he asks if Lin Zichen studied the book during the holidays. Lin Zichen confirms that he did, and the leader praises him, saying that his senior will help him begin the tempering. However, Lin Zichen states that he has already completed the first stage of tempering during the holidays, which leaves Liu Chuanwu and Song Yuyan completely stunned. Song Yuyan finds it impossible for someone to learn such a technique on their own, even with the book. After all, it took her a long time, even with assistance. Even the pavilion leader finds it hard to believe and asks to see Lin Zichen's hand. Upon looking at his arm, Liu Chuanwu is shocked and asks what his current biological level is. Lin Zichen replies that he is at normal rank, level 5. Immediately, Liu Chuanwu becomes excited to be in the presence of a genius and claims that if he continues like this, he will evolve into an advanced life form in no time. Song Yuyan is shocked to discover there is someone more talented than her, but on the other hand, she thinks this could take the pavilion to another level. So she suggests they publicly reveal Lin Ziken's potential, as they could then raise more funds and even recruit new students. However, the leader says this information cannot be leaked for now, as it would be dangerous, and they don't need unwanted attention hindering their progress. Furthermore, he states that geniuses should be valued for their quality, not quantity, and that they must focus their resources on Lin Zichen's evolution. Song Yuyan argues that their money isn't infinite, and asks what will happen if they run out of funds. Liu Chuanwu assures her that, if necessary, he will use all his connections to ensure Lin Zichen and the pavilion have everything they need. Given this, he decides that Lin Zichen doesn't need to attend the beginner classes, as he will be his personal mentor, with Song Yuyan as his assistant. The leader informs him that there will be an orientation lecture for the freshmen, and right after, an entrance assessment to choose the king of the freshmen. With Lin Zichen's current strength, the leader believes it will be easy for him to secure that title. He also promises that, upon winning, he will give Lin Zichen 10 QI pills, as well as 10 academic credit points. This was all he wanted to hear, and upon learning of the reward, he accepts immediately. The day of the lecture arrives. Lin Zichen waits beside Shen Qinghan until the boy from before shows up to greet him and asks about the relationship between the two of them. He replies that Shen Qinghan is his childhood friend, but now they are engaged and will get married after graduation. Hearing this, all the other boys become envious of him. Amidst this, Lin Zichen spots something that catches his attention. A girl with cat ears. He had never seen anyone like that before. In any case, the boy from before is called to the stage. His name is Li Moyu, and he is actually the leader of the freshmen, though he hadn't boasted about it until now. Upon reaching the podium, he feels that this is his moment. Li Moyu reveals he is the younger brother of Jingdu's genius, Li Yijin, who is as talented as rumored, having already undergone genetic alterations. Now, as a freshman, Li Moyu claims he will keep all the university's records in the family, asserting he is talented enough to do so. He then decides to demonstrate a bit of his power by increasing the air pressure. As a result, several students find it difficult to breathe and realize that a single freshman was capable of such a surprising feat. Meanwhile, Shen Qing'an comments that Li Moyu is just showing off because he's at level 5, but little does he know that Li Moyu isn't the strongest student among the freshmen. In any case, the host introduces the student council president, Zhou Shuihong, who will say a few words. Upon taking the stage, Zhou Shuihong says he has 3 announcements to make. First, that student discipline is the responsibility of the student council, not the teachers, and therefore the students must respect it. Second, he states that each semester, 10 freshmen are recruited based on their strength to join the council, and he expects to see dedication from the candidates. Third, he claims that on the inner campus, strength is what matters most, and everyone must be prepared to face the challenges. Lastly, before leaving, he says he will demonstrate a bit of the strength of an advanced life form. Just like Li Moyu, Zhou Shuihong increases the air pressure, but this time, the students feel a much greater force coming from the stage. The protagonist, for his part, notices that the pressure from an advanced life form is stronger. However, since he has already reached Tier 9, he doesn't feel it as a threat. Unlike him, all the other students are shocked by what just happened. Anyway, the vice principal takes the stage and announces that the freshmen will be examined. The rules are simple. Everyone can stay in the arena, but whoever manages to remain standing alone for 1 minute will be the champion and receive 100 credits as a prize. The top 10 will be awarded, but the value of the credits will decrease according to each student's ranking. Additionally, all participants will receive 1 credit point. Even if they don't win, they will be rewarded for their participation. Amidst this, He Yu forcibly grabs the microphone, startling those present. He says he has a friend named Lin Zichen, whom everyone has probably heard of. He then declares that his goal is to help his friend get into the top 10 by facing the elite class, and he asks for everyone's help. Some already know of the protagonist's fame, so they agree it's better not to fight him, but to help him instead. Next, Liu Chuanwu comments that his rival is very resentful, and that just because he got a beating from Li Yijin at the beginning of the year, it doesn't mean he has to take it out on his brother. Ma Zhenhe replies that when it comes to being resentful, there's no one worse than the pavilion leader. However, Liu Chuanwu claims to hold a grudge only against those who have wronged him, not their relatives. Zhou Shuihong interrupts the argument and comments that he heard Director Ma's daughter did very well on the university entrance exam. Ma Zhenhe says his daughter placed 3rd in Kyoto and asserts that she will definitely join the student council in the future. At this, Zhou Shuihong asks who they have bet on to be this year's king or queen. While the others place their bets, Liu Chuanwu says the winner will be the newest member of his pavilion, Lin Zichen. Ma Zhenhe claims the boy isn't even ranked among the top 10 this year and thinks the pavilion leader is boasting for nothing. Therefore, Liu Chuanwu proposes they bet 100 credits on their chosen candidates. The others also decide to join the bet, bet, which increases Ma Zhenhe's desperation. He only agrees so as not to get a reputation as a coward, but at the same time, he thinks there's no way Lin Zichen can win this competition. At that moment, the director of the mechanical modifications course approaches and recalls that Lin Zichen was one of Director Ma's freshmen, asking if that doesn't bother him. From Ma Zhenhe's reaction, the director already has his answer. In any case, the pavilion leader thinks that the bet has accumulated 1,000 credits, and upon winning, he will have plenty to boast about. The exam begins and the students rush into the fray. Meanwhile, the protagonist notices that many in the elite class got in because of their high compatibility with gene fusion, but the ones who are truly strong have stayed out of the arena. Led by Li Moyu and Ma Siwei, there are 12 of them in total. Thanks to his danger perception attribute, the protagonist realizes that the leaders are the strongest, at Tier 5, while the others are at Tier 4. Inside the arena, many have already fallen, and those who remain standing challenge the elite students, until one of them steps down into the arena, claiming that the rookie's arrogance won't grant them victory. He says he will show them how strong an elite student is. The freshmen think that if they attack together, they can win, but they discover the hard way that this tactic isn't very effective. The elite class student boasts that no one there can defeat him. Just then, the protagonist steps into the arena and says he's willing to try. Hearing this, the elite student says he's heard of Lin Zichen. He introduces himself as Lu Kiji and states that he's been wanting to face the protagonist ever since he saw his results. Challenged, the protagonist prepares to fight and immediately lands a kick on his opponent, sending him flying. The masters and directors are left speechless at the protagonist's performance. Another elite student then enters the arena, but just like the one before, he is defeated with a single blow. The weaker students find it incredible to see the elites getting thrashed. Amidst the chaos, Ma Shiwei enters the arena, unwilling to let the entire elite group be defeated. She takes it upon herself to eliminate the freshmen. The protagonist thinks this is a great opportunity to observe a genetically modified individual up close. Ma Siwei attacks with great speed, which Lin Zichen recognizes as the same possessed by a shadow cat. However, as he dodges, he surprises her. She realizes she is no threat to Lin Zichen and that continuing to attack is useless. Ma Siwei backs away and asks for 30 seconds to fully activate her genes before continuing the fight. The protagonist agrees, thinking this is a rare opportunity to see a modified individual in action. Since she is the director's daughter, Ma Zhenhe's colleagues praise him for having such a talented daughter. However, Ma Zhenhe thinks that Ma Siwei underwent the fusion only a short time ago, and that if she pushes herself like this, her body will suffer. Even so, he knows very well that his daughter is extremely competitive. For her part, Ma Siwei thinks her opponent is incredibly arrogant for waiting for her to activate her genes, believing he could still beat her. She declares that he will pay for this arrogance. Despite this, the protagonist dodges and imagines that if they were on the same level, this wouldn't be happening. But now that he is at Tier 9, someone weaker won't be able to hit him. Ma Shiwei is in disbelief, realizing that even with her genes active, she couldn't land a single hit. She increases the speed of her attacks, but it's no use, which frustrates her even more. The protagonist thinks he has gathered enough information and no longer needs to hold back. With a single punch, he strikes his opponent, causing the powerful Ma Shiwei to fall before everyone. Worried about his daughter, Ma Zhenhe rushes to her side. Angrily, he asks what kind of man Lin Zichen is to hit a girl so hard. The protagonist replies that on the path of evolution, there are no men or women, only the strong and the weak. Li Moyu agrees with this and introduces himself as his next opponent. He is the last hope of the elite class and feels he cannot lose this fight. Li Moyu says the protagonist is just pretending to be weak and probably hid his true strength even during the entrance exam. However, he claims that Lin Zichen isn't the only one to do so. After all, he himself also hid his true power. Li Moyu assumes his true form. He is fused with the genes of the giant demonic-eyed ape and is about to use his full strength in the fight. Seeing this, the pavilion leader thinks he has lost the bet because even if Lin Zichen is strong, there's no way he can win. Far away, a mission from the organization reaches Lu Gang. On the communicator, a person informs him that they have just planted a high-level demonic seed outside the school, and their mission is to make Li Moyu consume it. The person also says that the organization's power is far greater than they imagine, and therefore, the mere Li family of Kyoto is nothing before them. Hearing this, Wang Shujie and his friend realize there is no way to refuse the mission. Even though they don't like the idea, they have no other choice. Back at the fight, the protagonist knows that giant apes have absurd strength, but are slow. In any case, they cannot be underestimated. The opponent claims that Lin Ziqin's strength doesn't even compare to his. In turn, the protagonist wasted no time and tried to strike his opponent, but he realized the man's reaction time wasn't bad, as he managed to dodge a Tier 6 punch. In response, Lin Ziqin decided to increase his strength and speed to Tier 7, which allowed him to land a blow on his opponent. However, Li Moyu was not defeated, as his defense was as formidable as his strength. Annoyed, he said he was just warming up and declared that now he would fight for real. The protagonist attacked again, but even though he was faster, he couldn't inflict much damage. Despite being slower, Li Moyu was very resilient and had finally shown himself to be a worthy opponent. As he attacked, Lin Ziqin analyzed his foe and believed he now had what he needed to win. Li Moyu, on the other hand, said that despite being fast, his opponent was weak and would therefore lose. He then decided it was his turn to attack. Instead of dodging, the protagonist stood motionless. At this, those who had bet on Li Moyu's victory began to celebrate prematurely. However, as the punch landed, Li Moyu felt an immense pain in his arm, for he had just broken it with his own strike. Everyone wondered what had just happened. Lin Ziqin reflected that his opponent had lost to his own strength. In his eagerness to win, he had exceeded his own limits. He announced that Moyu's right hand was fractured and called for the medics to attend to him. However, it was the vice director who stepped forward. Yuan Dongji, equally impressed, decided to check the student's arm herself. Realizing the boy had indeed fractured his arm, she wondered just how resilient Lin Ziqin's skin was. She even tried to analyze him, but the protagonist had used one of his attributes to conceal his true strength. After returning to the group of masters, Yuan Dongji reported that the boy's strength was only Tier 6, and that she had seen nothing unusual about him. The protagonist then realized his tactic had worked. After receiving medical treatment, Li Moyu felt much better and noticed his fracture was already healed. Lin Ziqin then told him that if he was feeling better, he could leave the arena. Furious about his loss, Li Moyu promised to get his revenge as soon as his gene fusion advanced. A minute passed, and the protagonist was declared the victor. At this news, the entire class of common students celebrated, as one of their own had defeated an elite student in an official tournament. Afterward, the protagonist went to Shen Qinghan and led her to the center of the arena. There, he declared that all placements from 1st to 10th place were his, and demanded to receive the corresponding prize. Some students from the elite class were furious with the situation and charged at the protagonist, claiming he couldn't take everything for himself. Even Ma Jiwei attacked, going after Shen Qinghan and calling her a traitor for allying with the protagonist. However, Lin Ziqin protected his girlfriend and defeated all who challenged him, confident that now no one else would dare to oppose him. Thus, he established himself in 1st place, while Shen Qinghan took 2nd for being in the arena by his side. As for the remaining spots, Lin Ziqin announced that he would choose the placements himself. He then selected his friends, starting with Li Chuxin. He Yu was not left out and was also selected. Ma Zhenhe was furious and claimed this was against the rules, pleading with the vice director to do something. The pavilion leader, however, stated that his actions weren't against the rules and called Ma Zhenhe a sore loser. Yuan Dongji, for his part, admitted it was a loophole, but said he would fix it the following year. For now, he would let Lin Ziqin do as he pleased. Meanwhile, a message came through Lu Gang's communicator, informing him that the plan had changed. The new target was now Lin Ziqin. He was the one who had to consume the pill and become a member of their organization. After the exam ended, the pavilion leader approached the protagonist, telling him he never ceased to be amazed. The protagonist, in turn, reminded the leader not to forget his promise. With that, Liu Chuanwu handed over the pills and said he had transferred triple the promised benefits and credits for the boy to spend as he wished. Curious, Liu Chuanwu asked how much strength the protagonist had truly been hiding. Lin Ziqin revealed that, in addition to his skin, he had also tempered his muscles and bones, leaving the leader speechless. Liu Chuanwu understood then why the boy had won, and declared that he would indeed open great doors for everyone in the future. Back at home, the protagonist observed the pills he had won and decided to test the effects of one. After consuming just one, his QI rose by 108 points, but he considered the effect rather useless. He reflected that he could achieve the same result just by running a few kilometers, but thought the pills might be more useful for Shen Qinghan. And speaking of her, the girl had just arrived at the dormitory. The protagonist handed one of the pills to Shen Qinghan and asked for her opinion. She realized it was a blood pill. After consuming it, she felt warmer and noticed a significant increase in her QI. Realizing the pills were more effective on her, Lin Ziqin gave her her the rest, but instructed her to use only one a day. The next day, the protagonist went to the pavilion headquarters. There, Song Yu-yan greeted him, saying she had heard the latest news about him. She admitted to having her doubts at first, but now she was certain that Lin Zixin was a genius and believed the world would be shocked when it learned more about him. Sometime later, the protagonist reflected that his seniors had studied hard, but were all stuck at the same point, as none of them had figured out how to unblock their meridians. In that case, he would have to figure it out on his own, but he believed that with the attribute of the celestial root of wisdom, it would be quite easy. Song Yu-yan approached, telling him that someone from the student council was looking for him with an invitation. Lin Zixin said he wasn't interested, but his senior mentioned that student council members received a monthly bonus in credits. Outside, the protagonist met with Zhou Shuihong. He invited Lin Zixin to join the student council as a presidential candidate, explaining that he would be trained for the position if he accepted. Zhou Shuihong explained that there were many benefits. In addition to participating in the university's decisions, Lin Zixin would also receive a very generous monthly bonus. However, he stated that Lin Zixin would have to agree to one condition. He must give up on becoming a pure-blood human and accept the path of genetic fusion. The student council didn't accept anyone who denied the path of fusion, as it would be bad for the image they wanted to project. The protagonist stated that in that case, he would refuse the invitation. To him, it didn't matter what benefits the council offered, as nothing could surpass what the pavilion was already providing. The council members concluded that Lin Zixin must have been brainwashed, as that was the only explanation for someone to refuse such an offer. Faced with this, the council president went so far as to question whether Lin Zixin was truly the genius they had imagined. When Lin Zixin told her what happened, his senior was furious to learn they had tried to bribe him. Then, the pavilion leader appeared, looking extremely tired. Song Yu-yan then commented that the leader had been working hard at night, offering his own body in exchange for investments for the pavilion. Shortly after, Liu Chuanwu approached and told the protagonist that women are like tigers on the path of evolution, sucking the very soul from their victims, and advised the young man to avoid them. He also informed him that the university provided housing for the families of geniuses, so Lin Zixin could bring his parents to live with him. The protagonist replied that he would be meeting his parents over the weekend and had already spoken to them about it. The coordinator also granted Lin Zixin access to accept missions, which could be completed in exchange for credits to get stronger. Song Yu-yan mentioned that she takes on missions every week and invited the protagonist to come along and familiarize himself with the system. Lin Zixin agreed and decided to see what was available. He noticed that most of the missions were trivial and unrewarding, and the worthwhile ones were too far from the university. However, amidst his search, he finally found something interesting. Song Yu-yan was surprised to see he had accepted the Catwoman mission and offered to help. She explained that the missions were public, and the protagonist noticed that the team needed 28 people, with only 2 spots left to fill. He also saw that Ma Shiwei had accepted the same mission, and thought she was being too bold by taking on something above her level. In any case, the protagonist left to get lunch, and on the way, he realized he was being followed by someone at the 7th level. The pursuer confronted him and asked what Ma Shiwei had done to deserve the punch she took. The young man blamed Lin Zixin for what happened and challenged him to a duel. Lin Zixin, however, simply asked who was behind this. The young man claimed he was acting on his own accord, in the name of Ma Shiwei's honor. Lin Zixin simply ignored him, thinking he didn't have time to waste on that kind of flatterer. When the young man tried to block his path, Lin Zixin handled the situation quickly and continued on his way. Upon arriving at his girlfriend's dormitory, Shen Qinghan informed him that the 5 kilograms of undead worm meat he had bought had just arrived, and that she had put it all in the refrigerator. Lin Zixin had wanted to buy enough to assimilate 100% of the essence, but that would have drawn too much attention, so he only bought 5 kilograms. Even so, the amount was enough for him to assimilate 10%. Then, Shen Qinghan asked why he was throwing the meat away. The protagonist revealed that he could absorb the essence of beasts through their flesh, which was why what he had bought had already spoiled. For Shen Qinghan, this explained a lot. She commented that with such a power, he wouldn't even need to undergo a genetic mutation. Changing the subject, Lin Zixin told her that the coordinator had authorized them to bring their families to live at the university, and Shen Qinghan thought it was a great idea. She also revealed that there would be an elite-ranking duel later and invited him to watch, as she had heard a cyborg was going to challenge a mutant. The two went to the gymnasium. Besides the teachers and students, people from the Mecha God group were also present. The protagonist recognized the famous cyborg from TV and reflected that the Mecha God group invests heavily in the genetic modification course. Shen Qinghan Han asked who would win a fight between the genius from the capital and the cyborg prodigy. Lin Zichen replied that if the student from the evolution course won the current duel, the genius from the capital was stronger, otherwise the cyborg would be the winner. The duel between the student from the evolution course and the one from genetic modifications finally began. Using his cybernetic capabilities, the cyborg fired several missiles toward his opponent. Bombarded, the mutant was left unable to react. Seeing this, the cyborg stopped shooting and launched a close-quarters attack. With a single punch, he knocked out his opponent, sending him to the ground. The victory was absolute, as the cyborg won without taking any damage. Sometime later, an assistant informed Yuan Dongji that Passage 36 of Yandi had been too quiet in recent months for no apparent reason. She also commented that Bai Qian Shui was evolving quickly, almost reaching the advanced rank of Tier 2, and added that the girl was so special she hardly seemed human, expressing curiosity about her origin. Yuan Dongji cut her off, telling her not to ask such questions and to just focus on her work. Then, Yuan Dongji turned her attention back to the fight between cyborgs and mutants, noting their clear advantage. However, she reflected that this was a limited strength, as mechanical modifications couldn't be used in Yuandi, where all electronic equipment ceases to function. Back with the protagonist, he and Shen Qinghan spent the weekend with their parents and, after a conversation, convinced them to live with them. With that family matter settled, Lin Zichen decided to focus on the Catwoman mission. He headed to the Red Light District, the known hunting ground of his target. Knowing that the Catwoman was skilled in disguise and used chemical substances against her prey, he decided to use his celestial eyes and his danger perception for the search. However, his careful scan ended up drawing unwanted attention. A large man approached and confronted him, asking if he was staring at him. Lacking patience, Lin Zichen used his biological pressure to push the meddler away. Since he found nothing in that area, he decided to search elsewhere. He didn't find his target, but he ran into a familiar face, Ma Shiwei. She was accompanied by two seniors of normal rank Tier 7, and it was clear they were also on the Catwoman mission. Ma Shiwei, however, was not at all pleased to see Lin Zichen and ordered her group to move away from him. As they distanced themselves, she warned them that Lin Zichen was also on the mission and that they needed to find the target first. One of her allies, who had fused with the genes of a demonic hound, claimed his keen sense of smell could help. Shortly after, he detected the scent of the Catwoman coming from a nearby bar. The trio hurried to the location. The tracker pointed to a girl, but Ma Shiwei was doubtful, saying she looked normal. He insisted that his sense of smell never lied, and that it could only be the Catwoman in disguise. Convinced, they rushed to capture her, but the woman reacted instantly, escaping through a glass window and starting a chase through the district. The Catwoman is much faster and manages to create a good distance, but the young man continues to follow her trail by scent. He corners her in a dark alley, declaring that she has nowhere to run. To their surprise, the woman reveals that if she had wanted to escape, no one could have caught her. Her true intention was not to flee, but to lure them into a trap. With her prey exactly where she wanted them, the Catwoman unleashes an overwhelming biological pressure, far beyond what they can handle, and begins to transform into her true form, revealing she was only hiding her real strength. Ma Shiwei tells her group to run, stating that the mission is too difficult. However, the Catwoman claims she won't let them escape and blocks their path. She turns to the dog boy and says his appearance caught her eye ever since he entered the bar. In response, Ma Shiwei throws a smoke grenade, explaining that the device stuns the target's senses and will give them a chance to escape. After getting away from the danger, Ma Shiwei's allies complain that the mission is harder than usual. They insist that, as the coordinator's daughter, she should do something about it. Ma Shiwei then takes out her phone to talk to her father, but she remembers that Lin Zichen is also on the mission and needs to be warned about the danger. Since she doesn't have his number, she decides to call Shen Qinghan. Meanwhile, the Catwoman laments letting her prey escape. However, she sees someone approaching. She finds him handsome and comments that he's her type. Since she couldn't hunt earlier, she's satisfied, believing she's facing an easy target. However, Lin Zichen is not there to play games and prepares to attack. The Catwoman sees the young man move and notices he is faster than her. Because of this, she can't dodge the blow and is thrown to the other side when it connects. Lin Zichen thinks that he only used half his strength, but it was enough to disfigure the enemy. The Catwoman, in turn, wonders how someone so young could be stronger than her without even having genetic modifications. She decides it's better to flee, believing she won't be able to win. However, she is surprised to see that the young man can keep up with her speed. Lin Zichen thinks it's time to test 100% of his strength. Even after being struck again, his opponent is still alive. Faced with this, he thinks it's better to end the fight quickly before she can recover. Suddenly, he perceives the Catwoman's biological pressure beginning to rise. He notes that she has had a blood awakening upon being on the verge of death and is now one step away from reaching an advanced life form. Furious, the Catwoman asks Lin Zichen who he is. In response, he says he was mistaken to attack her and apologizes. The Catwoman thinks that she had to use her full potential to avoid death and that she is facing someone completely unpredictable. So instead of fighting, she decides it's better to retreat and recover. However, as she moves away, she hears a strange noise and a piece of iron hits her by surprise. The projectile was fired by Lin Zichen. After all, he wasn't going to leave without completing the mission. After hitting the target a few more times, he notices that the Catwoman's biological pressure has completely disappeared. This meant the mission was accomplished. To prove his achievement, the protagonist takes a photo and sends it to the university's app. He also calls the security department, which is responsible for cleaning up the mess. Meanwhile, he takes the opportunity to absorb the Catwoman's life essence, but is surprised to find that even in that state, she still had 36% of her vital energy. Elsewhere, Ma Shiwei calls her father and says she almost died during the mission, explaining that the Catwoman they believed to be level 6 was actually level 9. Her father asks her to describe everything in detail so he can report the error to the person in charge. After finishing the call, Ma Shiwei suggests they return to campus before the Catwoman finds them. However, her friend reassures her, saying that won't be a problem, as the mission was just completed by Lin Zichen. Surprised, Ma Shiwei wonders how a freshman managed to defeat such a powerful enemy alone. In any case, the weekend ends, and the protagonist returns to campus with his girlfriend. He then receives a notification that the mission points have been deposited, but he notices the reward is higher than promised. The message explains that due to an error in the enemy's classification, he was compensated with extra points. The protagonist notes that the app's information is not entirely reliable and decides to be more careful from now on. He also says he'll find a way to take Shen Qinghan with him next time, which makes her very happy. For his part, he thinks the best way to spend these points is by buying more undead worm meat to complete his assimilation. However, he concludes that from now on, he'll need to think about Shen Qinghan too, as she needs to evolve just as much as he does. So he asks what kind of meat his girlfriend prefers. Shen Qinghan does some research and suggests the meat of a tyrant eagle, as it's both affordable and of good quality. The protagonist agrees and says he'll buy it, but Shen Qinghan says she still has credits and wants to do the shopping this time. Lin Zichen thinks that since they're living together as a couple, there's no need for such formalities. In the middle of their meal, someone knocks on the door. The protagonist answers and realizes it's the meat delivery, thinking it arrived surprisingly fast. He decides to put the eagle meat in the fridge while he absorbs the worm meat immediately. With this, he manages to complete 100% of the worm's assimilation and realizes the monster's regeneration ability is incredible. Eager to test it, he makes a cut on his own hand and notices that in a matter of seconds, the wound has healed. With this new ability, the protagonist understands that superficial wounds will no longer be a major concern. Someone knocks on the door again. He finds it strange as he hasn't bought anything else. Upon opening the dorm room door, he's in for a surprise. Ma Shiwei apologizes for showing up so late, but claims she has something important to discuss. Lin Zichen asked the reason for her visit. Ma Shiwei replied that she was curious about how he completed the Catwoman mission and wanted to know how he defeated her. Lin Zichen said it was a bit complicated, but invited her in for tea to talk about other things. However, Ma Shiwei only wanted to know about the mission, and since he wasn't going to tell her, she decided to leave. Shortly after, Lin Zichen's girlfriend revealed that Ma Shiwei had called her, warning her about the mission's danger because she was worried about him, concluding that she doesn't seem like a bad person. Sometime later, the pavilion leader commented that the error in the information about the Catwoman mission had sparked discussions within the university. Despite this, he knew that Lin Zichen had successfully completed the mission, even with the enemy being stronger than expected, and asked how he managed it. The protagonist replied that he didn't do anything special, just the usual. He finished the enemy off using martial arts. Lin Zichen knew it was hard for others to believe this, as he hid his true strength and no one knew his real power. Deciding to trust his pavilion mates more, he revealed that his true strength was at tier 9. Furthermore, he told them he had already completed the first stage of body tempering and was currently in the second stage, skin treatment. The pavilion leader was moved upon hearing the news, saying that his years of perseverance were finally paying off. He stated that when the time was right, he would reveal his pavilion's advancements to the world, which would leave everyone shocked. The leader also commented that Lin Zichen's talent was unmatched, and that if it weren't for his lack of origin power, he would suspect the young man was an inhuman from Yuandi. Having never heard of inhumans, Lin Zichen asked for more details. Liu Chuanwu explained that inhumans exist just like mutant beasts, but they usually stay in Yuandi and don't visit Earth often. Even Song Yuyan was shocked by the revelation, as her master had never told her this. The pavilion leader added that origin power is a type of energy unique to the creatures of Yuandi, similar to qi or spiritual power. However, he himself had only met 2 inhumans in his entire life, so he didn't have much information. Lin Zichen asked if there were any restrictions for visiting Yuandi. The leader replied that the minimum requirement was Tier 1 of the advanced level, which was why he had never been there, having met the inhumans on Earth. He recounted that one of the inhumans was a disciple of his ex-wife, whom he met 10 years ago, but he didn't know much about the girl. The other, Liu Chuanwu, found in a mysterious and ancient ruin, the same one where the blood-tempering art was discovered. He stressed, however, that all of this was a secret and instructed his 2 students not to leak anything they had heard. Furthermore, Liu Chuanwu advised Lin Zichen to continue hiding his strength, as not everyone can be trusted. He also said that if he decided to take on more difficult missions, he should ask for Song Yuyan's help, because even if he is strong, it's good to have help from time to time. Lin Zichen thanked him for the advice and asked if the leader had any reference materials on Yuandi, as he would like to learn more. The leader explained that everything about Yuandi was confidential and that he himself knew very little. However, he said that Lin Zichen was close to reaching the advanced life form stage and would soon be able to go to Yuandi on his own. He warned him that the creatures there are much stronger and that for some time they have been seeking a way to invade Earth. It is speculated that there is something powerful on the planet that they desire, but no one knows what it is. Just then, Liu Chuanwu's phone rang. After answering, he said an old flame had invited him to dinner and that he had to leave. Song Yuyan remarked that the leader was working hard to attract new investors for the pavilion. Changing the subject, she asked how Lin Zichen managed to hide his strength so well that not even the university directors could sense it. He replied that he couldn't reveal that information, which only piqued Song Yuyan's curiosity. She even offered to trade secrets, saying he could ask her anything in exchange for the answer. Even so, Lin Zichen kept his secret, leaving his colleague frustrated. Faced with his refusal, she proposed a fight, since they were both at Tier 9 of the normal rank. Lin Zichen liked the idea, as fighting someone at the same level would help him better understand his own abilities. Song Yuyan noted that they were similar in strength, but her temperament stage was slightly more evolved, making her more durable. Song Yuyan allowed Lin Zichen to attack first. He then prepared his attack and demonstrated his power to his senior. Despite having a very durable body, Song Yuyan realized he was capable of injuring her if he kept attacking. She figured that at this rate, he would soon become much stronger than her. However, she didn't want to admit defeat and felt she needed to maintain a superior posture. So she said she was dissatisfied with the kick she received and advised the protagonist to hit the target squarely at the first opening he found. She added that he should have aimed for her vital organs to incapacitate her, because now she had the opportunity to counterattack and she wouldn't go easy on him. The two charged into the fight and began an intense exchange of blows. Unlike Lin Zichen, Song Yuyan was giving it her all, but she realized she was at a disadvantage. Therefore, she decided it was better to win quickly, before she ran out of energy. Realizing his senior was fighting for real, the protagonist decided to feign defeat and took her blow. After the fight, Song Yuyan said the young man truly had a promising future. After all, she had to use 90% of her strength to defeat him, and she feared that in a year, she wouldn't be able to beat him even with her full power. She also said that with his current strength level, Lin Zichen could already try to open his meridians, and she offered to teach him what she had discovered so far. They prepared, and Song Yuyan explained that the human body has 366 meridians spread throughout, and the easiest ones to open are located around the heart. She instructed that as soon as the protagonist felt the 4 heart meridians, he must control his chi to strike them 10 times per second. Lin Zichen tried the method, but ended up failing. Song Yuyan told him not to rush and suggested they practice the theory a bit more before trying again. Meanwhile, the pavilion leader, Liu Chuanwu, was in the basement of the Liu family. He informed his master that he had finally found the person they were looking for, a young man with the potential to break through all the barriers of the pure blood path. When the time comes, his master could use the young man's chi to finally escape the bronze coffin. However, the master did not respond. Liu Chuanwu noticed that the pavilion's energy was growing weaker and weaker, and concluded that Lin Zichen needed to evolve quickly before his master died for good. Back with Lin Zichen, he arrived home and was greeted by his girlfriend, Shen Qinghan. She told him that her master wanted her to undergo gene fusion sooner than expected, and that the most suitable one would be to fuse with the deep blue jellyfish. Lin Zichen knew that even though it was a low-level creature, this jellyfish could evolve, and it also possessed a great affinity for the water element. He thought it was a good idea, but Shen Qinghan was afraid, believing the fusion might not succeed because her body was weak. Lin Zichen comforted her, explaining that mutant jellyfish genes were very expensive and that her master was being very generous by investing so much in her. He advised her not to worry, as the risks of the fusion failing were minimal since she had high compatibility. He reminded her that she had even frozen her eggs and was prepared, and that she should trust her master. Furthermore, he mentioned that the visual changes caused by fusions, most of the time, made a person even more beautiful. After hearing his words, Shen Qinghan began to feel more confident. She looked up a video of the mutant jellyfish online and found the creature very beautiful, believing she could also inherit a beautiful appearance. Lin Zichen replied that his girlfriend was already very beautiful, and there was no way she could become ugly. A little embarrassed, Shen Qinghan told him the video was made by her master, who had dived deep into the sea without any equipment to record it. She then wondered if she would ever become as strong as her master. Lin Zichen assures her that he will do everything in his power to help her achieve greatness. Hearing this, Shen Qinghan says she'll have to work hard to repay his kindness. The next day, Shen Qinghan went to class, while Lin Zichen decided to stay home and train. Checking the latest news, he discovered that mysterious plants had appeared in various parts of the city, and that botanists were cordoning them off for study. However, Lin Zichen noticed that these plants looked very similar to the photo Shen Qinghan's master had sent him. From this, he presumed the plants were certainly from Yuandi, and wondered if it had anything to do with the heretics behind the mutant rats. In any case, he needed to increase his strength to fight evil, so he considered buying some medicinal pills to speed up his progress. Visiting the university's app, he found some very good and cheap recovery pills, and decided to buy 100 of them at once. Additionally, he also thought it was time to assimilate the next beast and began searching for a suitable one. Searching the store, Lin Zichen found poisonous mongoose meat. He knew that despite its name, this creature wasn't venomous. It was called that because it fed on other venomous beings, which left the mongoose constantly exposed to toxins. Lin Zichen concluded that by assimilating the mongoose's ability, he would become immune to toxins, just like the creature, and would no longer have to worry about being poisoned. Since the last time he tried to open his meridians didn't go as expected, Lin Zichen decided it was better to continue tempering his body for a while longer. After an hour of training, he noticed his chi consumption was very fast, and therefore he needed to rest. He also decided to eat something to replenish his energy. A while later, the university's delivery person arrived at his door. When he answered, Lin Zichen almost lost his balance as his muscles were very sore from the training. Even so, he managed to hold onto the box and not drop it. Soon after, he decided to use one of the pills to test its effectiveness. The effects appeared quickly. He felt a slight headache, but in return, his body was completely restored. Now he thought it was time to absorb the mongoose meat he had bought. By doing so, he assimilated 1% of the creature's ability. With the pills he bought, the time it took to recover his used chi decreased significantly. With this, he concluded that spending credits to get stronger was truly worth it. A while later, Shen Qinghan came home and brought a visitor with her. Lin Zichen saw Chushin and commented that it had been a while since they last saw each other. The girl replied that it was nice to see them living together. Unlike them, she didn't have a single room and had to share a cramped space with a roommate. Lin Zichen offered her a spare room he wasn't using, but his friend said it was less lonely living with a roommate and that she didn't intend to abandon her. In fact, she explained that she was there to vent a little, complaining that the upperclassmen were crazy. She said that for geniuses like her friends, things were easier, as no one dared to bully them, but for normal people, the situation was different. Chushin recounted that an upperclassman came to her dorm for a supposed inspection, and, because she liked her cosmetics, simply took what she wanted and left without a word.
She explained that this happened frequently, and that when someone complained, the higher-ups just said the university followed the principle of survival of the fittest, and that those who couldn't handle it could just leave. As friends, the couple showed they were willing to help Chushin in any way they could. However, their conversation was interrupted by a strong earth tremor.
Despite not detecting any strong signs of danger, Lin Zichen had a bad feeling. Far away, an ally of the Lord sent by the Divine said he wished to reach a higher biological level that year and asked for some materials for his evolution. The Lord replied that, due to the ally's recent good performance, he would give him a flower with an aphrodisiac effect, warning him to have a woman by his side when he used the item. The ally thanked him and revealed he had found a genius freshman at the university. He was arranging for the young man to consume the demonic seed, as he wanted to possess him. However, the Lord stated that the real geniuses were all in Yuandi, and that he didn't care about the others. At that moment, someone informed the Lord that they had found an interference point in Yuandi and needed him to activate the connection. Immediately, the Lord teleported to the location. The ally thought that since he couldn't access the geniuses of Yuandi, he had to capture one on Earth instead. He then ordered his lackeys to complete the mission within 3 days. Sometime later, Lin Zichen was walking through campus with his girlfriend when Lu Gang and Wang Shujie appeared, saying they needed help. Wang Shujie explained that a senior student disliked them and took advantage of the pair every day, so they wanted help to stop him. Lu Gang offered to pay for their help with spiritual fruits. He said the bag contained several pills with different effects, which he would trade for the favor. Lin Zichen asked if this senior was strong, and the boys replied that he was level 6. The protagonist accepted the mission and the upfront payment, telling them to meet him later to handle the matter. The two thanked him for his help and went on their way. Shen Qinghan was excited about the gift, commenting that she had never eaten one of those spiritual fruits before. They decided to try them, but Shen Qinghan noticed the fruits didn't look right, as they appeared to be rotten. Lin Zichen took a closer look, and his sense of danger flared. Immediately after, his system warned him that it was a high-level goo seed from the tree demon. Immediately, Lin Zichen ran after the boys who had delivered the fruits. He also asked Shen Qinghan to call her master to their location. Yuan Dongji arrived quickly and asked what was happening. Lin Zichen explained that the two young men had shown up with a bag full of demonic seeds, and that he suspected a connection to the divine plant cult. The vice principal confirmed it was a seed from a mutant tree. Whoever consumes it is controlled by the tree and loses command of their own body. Hearing this, Lin Zichen asked if the two boys were also being controlled. Regardless, Yuan Dongji said she would take them in for questioning and would report back with her findings. She warned that the cults were everywhere and advised her disciple and Lin Zichen to always be careful. Shen Qinghan remarked that her master's power was truly impressive. She added that the boys were liars, as they had asked for help but were actually trying to cause harm. Lin Zichen agreed that, just as the vice principal had warned, they needed to be extremely careful from now on. The results of the investigation came out the next day. It was discovered that the boys were being controlled by a cultist, and both were punished and expelled from the university. The good news was that Lin Zichen's and Shen Qinghan's parents had arrived to live with them. With the help of the pills he had bought, Shen Qinghan reached 40% of the second stage of her body tempering. Not long after, the day for Shen Qinghan's fusion finally arrived. Yuan Dongji explained that the mutant jellyfish was a water element creature, so Shen Qinghan needed to drink a large amount of water for the fusion to work. The girl drank water until she couldn't take anymore. Then, her master announced that they could begin. She presented a syringe with the mutant jellyfish's genes, explaining that she would inject it into Shen Qinghan's heart, but that she would be anesthetized and feel no pain. However, once the anesthesia wore off, she would feel pain throughout her body due to the genetic modifications. As the procedure was carried out, Lin Zichen watched everything. He knew that normally, various pieces of equipment would be needed for such a surgery, but the vice principal was skilled enough to perform it without them. After injecting the genes, Yuan Dongji warned that the anesthesia would soon wear off and the pain would begin. However, 10 minutes passed, and Shen Qinghan felt nothing. She then asked if the process had gone wrong. Yuan Dongji herself couldn't answer the question. She simply didn't understand what she had done wrong for the mutation to not manifest in her disciple. After an analysis, the vice principal explained that Shen Qinghan hadn't fully fused with the jellyfish beast, but that the procedure couldn't be called a failure either. She continued, saying that the pain was a common result of a successful fusion, as long as there was no rejection. However, the jellyfish's genes had caused neither a reaction nor rejection in her disciple's body. Confused, the protagonist asked what that meant. The vice director revealed that she had sensed with her spiritual powers that Shen Qinghan's genes possessed self-awareness and had restricted the jellyfish genes, acting like antibodies. The situation was so unusual that she admitted to never having seen anything like it before. Just then, Shen Qinghan noticed that the color of her hair was changing. Yuan Dongji commented that this usually happens when a fusion is successful, and that if the procedure had failed, her hair shouldn't be changing. Shen Qinghan stated that she felt something different in her body, a new presence she believed she could control. Intrigued, the vice director performed another analysis, thinking that perhaps she had missed something. She asked Shen Qinghan to try and control this new power, to make it enter a state of hibernation. As Shen Qinghan concentrated to follow her master's guidance, the vice director observed, impressed. The two elite geniuses had only managed something similar 15 days after their surgery, whereas Shen Qinghan had learned almost instantly. Worried, the protagonist asked what exactly was happening to her. Yuan Dongji replied that she had good news and bad news. The bad news was that Shen Qinghan might never be able to genetically fuse with a beast. The good news, however, was that she didn't need to. The master concluded that her disciple was, in fact, more powerful than anyone genetically modified, as she could do things others couldn't. She explained that Shen Qinghan's genes were capable of controlling the injected genes. This way, she could use the beast's abilities without being controlled by them. This meant that Shen Qinghan was still a pureblood, making her the first person to possess such an ability. Consequently, she could be the first person on Earth to evolve into an advanced life form while remaining a pureblood. The protagonist thought to himself, himself that the director hardly knew he was also capable of the same thing. Shen Qinghan understood that she was able to absorb the abilities of creatures without being modified by them, but she still needed the genes to absorb the power. Her master asked her to keep this a secret, even from her family, and promised that, as her tutor, she would study the full capacity of this new ability alongside her. 15 days passed. At home, an excited Shen Qinghan called out to the protagonist, saying she had discovered she could control water with her spiritual power. Lin Zichen commented that his girlfriend's abilities surprised him more and more. She revealed that she had also learned to control people's blood, an ability that could be used to incapacitate an enemy. Hearing this, the protagonist deduced that she was likely also able to control her own blood and could therefore undergo the same body tempering process as him. However, Shen Qinghan mentioned that, according to her master, her IQ and physical talent were too low, which would prevent her from following the pureblood path. Lin Zichen encouraged her, saying that just like him, she possessed extraordinary abilities. This meant that together they were stronger, and he asked her to at least try. Hearing his words, she felt more motivated and decided to try what her boyfriend had suggested. Sometime later, the protagonist taught Shen Qinghan how to temper her own body. It didn't take long for the girl to master the procedure. Lin Zichen realized that she had learned much faster than he had. What was most surprising was that she was still at Tier 2, which meant her potential to become stronger was immense. Shen Qinghan commented that just like him, she could now absorb abilities from mutant creatures without undergoing gene fusion, and concluded that the two of them made an incredible duo. Days later, Shen Qinghan managed to temper the skin of her entire body, and with that, advanced to Tier 3. The protagonist thought that he needed to test her in a future combat to see how resilient she had become. Just then, he found a mission on the university's app and realized it was the perfect opportunity for his plan. Sometime later, at the city's security headquarters, a police officer introduced two young people who had volunteered to assist with a mission. The introduction of the two prodigies to the rest of the force generated a wave of positive excitement. Captain Fang commented that he had a stepson who was also a freshman at the university and had joined the elite class. He lamented that Lin Zichen hadn't accepted the path of evolution, but hoped the young man would change his mind and leave the pavilion. In any case, the captain announced that he had invited his stepson to participate in the mission and would be sending him along with the duo. Just then, the stepson himself appeared on the scene. Fang called him Jian and boasted that the young man had recently evolved to Tier 5. He then led his stepson over to meet his mission partners. However, upon seeing Lin Zichen and Shen Qinghan, Jian recognized them immediately, wondering what the two of them were doing there. The captain noticed the change in his stepson's demeanor and asked what was wrong. Jian replied that he was just surprised to run into people he knew. He explained that he already knew them, as they were both famous at his university. Jian also mentioned that Lin Zichen was known as the king of freshmen for having defeated the entire elite class by himself. Fang, who had no idea Lin Zichen was so strong, realized he had made a mistake in underestimating him. That night, they set out in a convoy toward the bandits' hideout. The captain offered the youths bulletproof vests, but Lin Zichen refused, saying he didn't need one. Jian also claimed he didn't need one, stating that even though he wasn't as strong as Lin Zichen, he was durable enough to not be harmed by gunfire. Upon arriving at an abandoned factory, the police officers went in first. As soon as they saw the police, the bandits panicked, and an intense firefight erupted. While the officers scrambled for cover, Lin Zichen decided to charge directly at the bandits with Jian right behind him. However, Jian immediately retreated after being hit. Unlike him, Lin Zichen kept advancing, invulnerable to the bullets. As soon as he got close, he attacked the bandits and took them all down. In a desperate move, one of the criminals threw a grenade. The explosion distracted the officers, allowing a few to escape. Seeing this, Lin Zichen said he would let Shen Qinghan handle the rest. Excited, the girl realized this was her moment. She used her ability to control the blood in her enemies' bodies, rendering them all immobile. With the bandits immobilized and captured, an officer showed them a strange box he had found. Fang noted that they were demonic seeds and concluded that the criminals were connected to the cultists. With the mission complete, Lin Zichen announced that he and Shen Qinghan needed to head back to the university, leaving the rest to the police. As they were preparing to leave, Lin Zichen saw something unusual. He noticed a rat planting a demonic seed and deduced that the rat cult and the plant cult had joined forces. He immediately told Shen Qinghan to alert her master, as the situation was too serious to be ignored. Lin Zichen also alerted Captain Fang, thinking it best to keep the police informed of the danger. 15 days later, the pair accepted another mission in collaboration with the police. The protagonist also enlisted Song Yuyan's help for a mission against a cyborg. Before he knew it, his first semester as a freshman was coming to an an end. During this time, he managed to complete the second stage of his body tempering, while Shen Qinghan fully completed the first stage. Lin Zikin commented that since she had only been practicing the technique for 3 months, completing the first stage already put her far ahead of most people. However, Lin Zikin also noticed she was still at tier 6, and concluded that while her spiritual energy was good, her physical strength was still lacking. Shen Qinghan was saddened by her lack of strength, wanting to keep up with her boyfriend, but the protagonist did his best to comfort her. Back at the pavilion, he and Song Yuyan were frustrated by their inability to open their meridians. To lighten the mood, she suggested they talk about something more cheerful, so the protagonist asked how many points he had stored with her. Song Yuyan, who had lent him her account to take on higher-level missions, said he had accumulated a total of 2,400 points. With that, he calculated that the points were enough to buy 99 kilograms of mongoose meat from the store and asked Song Yuyan to make the purchase for him. Song Yuyan didn't understand why he was buying so much meat, but she placed the order for him anyway. Back home, the protagonist took the boxes inside and absorbed their contents. Through this, he completed 100% assimilation with a new beast and became immune to every existing type of toxin. To test it, the protagonist injected an anesthetic into his arm. Realizing he felt no effect, he concluded that even normal medicines no longer worked on him. A short time later, he accompanied his girlfriend for a new gene injection. Before the procedure, Vice Director Yuan Dongji decided to check the status of the jellyfish gene to see if there would be any conflict with a new one. Upon doing so, she noticed that Shen Qinghan had risen from tier 2 to tier 6 and asked how she had evolved so quickly. Shen Qinghan replied that she had been practicing the art of body tempering and had already completed the first stage, precisely because of the blood control technique. Wen Dongji was surprised that her disciple had used the technique she learned from her to practice another skill. She said that Shen Qinghan was truly a genius and was destined to become the strongest in humanity. Seeing this, the vice director felt there was no need to hold back and decided to inject the genes of 5 different types of beasts to test Shen Qinghan's limits. Next, she administered the genes and noticed that 4 of them were eliminated as soon as they entered the girl's body. Only the genes of the undead worm survived and were enslaved, just like the jellyfish gene. Yuan Dongji realized that her disciple was only compatible with aquatic beasts, so she decided to test all the ones she had available. A while later, the vice director saw that only the worm gene was successful and concluded that, for now, Shen Qinghan had a limit of 2 aquatic genes. She theorized that perhaps Shen Qinghan didn't have enough physical strength or spiritual power, which was causing the limitation, but she believed that as soon as the girl grew stronger, she could absorb new genes. Yuan Dongji added that the good news was that the undead worm had a very good healing power and also possessed a body well lubricated by a natural mucus, which would be quite useful for the couple's intimacy. Finally, the vice director informed them that the upcoming freshman tournament had been postponed until the end of the semester. She said she had high expectations for her disciple and hoped she would at least reach the top 5 without needing help, like last time. However, the protagonist was not happy to hear this, as he was looking forward to the competition. Back at home, Shen Qinghan arrived accompanied by Li Chuxin. The protagonist asked why she was carrying so many bags. Li Chuxin explained that her family's clothing store had restocked, and she had brought some pieces for her friends. She said the clothes were clean and that they were welcome to try them on. Li Chuxin took the opportunity to take some photos, using her friends as models. Shen Qinghan commented that she now understood her friend's plan, but she was happy with the new clothes anyway. As soon as the photo session ended, the protagonist said they should eat. At the table, Shen Qinghan recounted that, upon returning to the dormitory with her friend, they encountered a very arrogant older student. This girl tried to take Li Chuxin's bags by force and only stopped after recognizing Shen Qinghan. Li Chuxin confirmed that this was the same student she had mentioned before and said she felt bad for getting her friend into trouble. She also added that the girl thought she was untouchable because she was on the student council, since her boyfriend got her in, and ever since she had been acting however she pleased. Indignant, the protagonist accompanied the girls to the martial arts gym. Arriving there, Li Chuxin pointed to Li Ziki, the troublemaking girl. The protagonist approached and asked Li Ziki if she intended to return the makeup she had borrowed from her friend. The girl replied that she wasn't a thief and would return it as soon as she was done using it. Furthermore, she claimed that she had never failed to return anything she borrowed. However, Li Chuxin contradicted her, stating that Li Ziki would take her new makeup and always return the empty containers. Li Ziki denied it, saying that wasn't true and that her friend Faye was her witness. Hearing so many lies, Li Chuxin was furious. The protagonist then got a teacher's attention and asked if, according to the university's rules, one student could oppress another without consequences. The teacher explained that, at the university, a weaker student can challenge a stronger one whenever they want. However, the reverse is only allowed when the weaker one agrees to the challenge. He also said that to determine who is stronger, they use the combat power ranking corresponding to each student's school year. Furthermore, for a challenge to take place, both students must agree to bet the same amount of credits, and the winner takes all. The protagonist then concluded that, in other words, as a senior student, Lee Ziki could be challenged by them at any moment. Frightened, and knowing the protagonist's reputation, Lee Ziki wanted no part in fighting him. She then argued that as the stronger one, he shouldn't be picking on a girl. However, the protagonist replied that he wouldn't be the challenger, but his girlfriend would. At this, Shen Qinghan agreed to fight on her friend's behalf, challenging the older student.